Chapter 1414. At this moment, on the mother planet of the Red Empire, in the ruler's office. In the room, the remote monitor projected the scene of E.S. God's prison. Bruce placed his hands on his nose and stared at Black Star on the screen with his sharp eyes, paying attention to the development. Why did this guy take the risk to do this back then? Bruce muttered to himself. When the incident happened, he had listened to Beccarotti's opinion and vaguely suspected that Black Star was behind God's disappearance. However, at that time, Unravel was still in charge, so it was not convenient for him to interfere. Later on, when he became the ruler, it was not suitable for him to investigate Black Star thoroughly, so he kept the matter under control. The only motive Bruce could think of was that God had tried to simulate the ability of the evolution cube, which was why Black Star had attacked him. As for Black Star's idea of killing a rookie based on the series of events with the World Tree, he felt that the possibility of Black Star doing so was relatively low. The problem with the evolution cube shouldn't have made him take such a risk. Black Star rarely does unnecessary things. There should be another reason why he secretly captured God. Bruce thought to himself, preparing his words. He glanced around and saw God's dispirited look as if he had been abused. He was even more furious. A direct descendant being treated like this was an insult to the dynasty's reputation. If Black Star made things difficult for him because of the evolution cube, he would not accept this. But even if I don't accept his explanation, what can I do? Bruce sighed in his heart, feeling rather depressed. The situation was grim, and Black Star was fully fledged. The three universal civilizations needed the association's strength to fight against the foreign enemies. Even if Black Star could not give him a satisfactory explanation, he helplessly realized that he still could not do anything to the other party and did not dare to retaliate. Judging from the perspective of benefits alone, the importance of a direct descendant of the dynasty who had not yet grown up was naturally not as important as Black Star, their partner. Although the dynasty's reputation had been damaged this time, which made Bruce angry, venting his anger was not something a person in his position should do. Even if the dynasty wanted to be tough, they had to look at the right time and place. Bruce even blamed Black Star for revealing this secret in front of Radiance and Ethereal. Wouldn't it have been better to tell him in private? At most, he would feel embarrassed, but he wouldn't let the other two families see him as a joke. Wouldn't it be better to deal with it behind closed doors? Before the problem of the World Tree was resolved, the dynasty could not do anything to Black Star. Not only did they have to cooperate, as usual, but after God was sent back, they also had to persuade him to put the big picture first and not take revenge for the time being. The more Bruce thought about it, the more frustrated he felt. I only hope that you can give me a reasonable explanation. Bruce exhaled heavily and secretly lowered his standards. On the other side, the amber that imprisoned E.S. God was already floating in front of everyone. Han Xiao glanced at it and saw that God was suppressing the emotions in his heart. He still had a straight expression and pretended to be confused. He could not help but smile. If it was before the split personality, the real E.S. God would not have done this. However, Esper Ability Rebirth had already turned the two of them into independent individuals. Their personalities had changed. God was God, and his main body was his main body. Speaking of which, the new E.S. God that was being imprisoned might have a personality more similar to the real E.S. God of the past. Tenny, I'm ready to take action. Activate the space stabilization anchor. Han Xiao nodded. Hearing this, Tenny turned around and gave the order. The fleets around quickly surrounded this area. The space-time stabilization anchors were activated one after another to stabilize this space. The space-time stabilization rate was stabilized. E.S. God had a lot of abilities and was very slippery. He could teleport away if one was not careful. Therefore, fixing the space was a necessary environmental modification. This time, Han Xiao walked out of the cabin alone and slowly flew to the E.S. God amber. Under everyone's gaze, he unlocked the seal. Buzz. E.S. God's eyes sparkled. He saw the situation clearly and hurriedly retreated. It had been decades since the last time he unlocked the seal, and E.S. God's soul was even more dispirited. However, The wormhole data that Black Star had tricked him about back then had already been researched. In order to wait for the day of his release, he had endured the loneliness and struggled to maintain his thoughts. Now that he had regained his freedom, he immediately reacted. However, ES God's condition was very low. The injuries that had not healed from the previous battle were still hurting, but he still put on his guard. He scanned the entire place and quickly locked on a Han Shao. Black Star, I didn't expect you to really let me out again. Looks like I made the right bet. Last time, in order to figure out God's background, Han Shao had let him out once. ES God had resisted stubbornly and almost died. After listening to Black Star's lies, he had decided to surrender and die without resisting. Now, it seemed like he had won the bet. Han Zhao's tone was calm. We meet again. Is the world tree here? ES God narrowed his eyes. He had no intention of exchanging pleasantries and went straight to the point. It's here. Han Shao nodded and said calmly. I'll let you out this time to fulfill my promise. I'll let you witness everything and borrow your strength. Hearing this, ES God seemed to be relieved of the heavy burden and smiled playfully. I've said it before, this day will come sooner or later. You guys will need my help one day. At this moment, ES God felt like he had finally seen the light of day. After being locked up for so many years, he was finally free. I won't refute you in this regard. Although you're full of evil, you're still a powerful combatant. It's too much of a waste to lock you up here. Han Shao raised his brows. However, the form of help is probably different from what you think. ES God was confused. I don't plan to let you live to play a role. I need to borrow your life. A dead ES God is a good ES God. What do you mean? You want to kill me? Now. ES God was stunned. You've sealed me for so long and only release me to kill me now. What's your motive? This was completely different from what ES God had expected. In his imagination, when a world tree descended, the three universal civilizations would most likely ask him for help out of courtesy for the information he had. That way, he would have room to turn the situation around. However, he did not expect that although he had gotten what he wanted and waited until the day the world tree descended, his life would also come to an end. He did not think that he could escape from Black Star's hands in his current weakened state. ES God had already realized this when they fought last time. He did not know about the existence of the underworld and did not understand what benefits his death would bring to Han Shao. However, this did not stop him from understanding the other party's killing intent and immediately reacted. ES God retreated rapidly, squeezing out his cells to the limit, pumping out waves of energy. His aura soared, and a radar alarm sounded. He was prepared to fight with his life. At the same time, a resolute mental wave spread out from ES God's body into the minds of everyone present. Black Star, I won't sit still and wait for death. If you want my life, come and take it yourself. At the same time, Tenny, who was watching the battle, secretly ordered the crew to turn on the full-view recording equipment. They're about to fight. Pay attention to recording the entire process. Don't miss out on any of the abilities Black Star displayed. On the side, God looked at the scene of ES God getting into position with complicated feelings. This was the first time he had seen his main body after splitting up. It had been almost 100 years. Looking at the body that he had once used to conquer the universe being controlled by a new personality, the feeling was indescribable. After all, no matter what, he had always used that body to live and familiarized himself with every inch of his body. He had spent a lot of effort to cultivate the powerful abilities of his main body, but he had no choice but to leave it to the newcomer. He missed it and was unwilling. If I wasn't caught back then, I wouldn't have given up my main body so quickly. God clenched his teeth. Now that the abilities of this new body had been taken away, the main body that he had left behind became his only hope. Looking at the scene of Black Star confronting his main body outside the window, God's thoughts spun quickly. With my main body's ability, as long as I can last for a while, I'll be able to break through the space stabilization effect of this area and escape with dimensional leap. There's still a chance. Although he had been locked up for decades and did not understand Black Star's progress, God was very clear about the strength of his main body. With the strength that Black Star had when he defeated him back then, he felt that he would not be able to take down his main body in a short time. This was hope. God was energized. However, just as he was concentrating and preparing to watch this fierce battle from the sidelines, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred in the field, causing his mind to tremble violently. A circle of golden lightning spread out from the surface of Han Zhao's body, and countless mechanical soldiers swarmed out. It was as if Han Zhao himself had become the gate of the secondary dimensional army box, directly ignoring the effect of the space stabilization anchor. Godly fortress. In the blink of an eye, a mechanical army far larger than the fleet present spread out in the battlefield. The next moment, a large number of machines gathered on Han Zhao's body and quickly synthesized into a strange-looking mechanical deity. Its structure was extremely complicated, and it looked like it was wearing a dark, golden, precise armor. It had a crown on its head, and its facial features were similar to Han Zhao's. Complicated silver-blue matrix patterns covered its body, flickering as if it was breathing. Compared to ordinary mechanical deities, the energy waves emitted by these mechanical bodies were even more shocking. They had a unique temperament and looked like they were one. They no longer looked like something synthesized, but more like an independent existence that had been summoned. Mechanical deity, supreme heavenly venerate. An intense high-level pressure suddenly swept out. All the life forms present felt an immense pressure as if a true god had descended. Tenny and the others were not beyond grade so they felt that it was normal, but God and God's expressions changed drastically. Could it be that you've already? God was stunned and shocked. Why had he been in the universe for so many years? Wasn't it to step into a higher realm? However, without any preparation, he saw what he suspected to be his dream on Black Star. How could he not be shocked? Before God could react from his shock, Han Zhao brazenly attacked. The image of the Emperor Sky Splitter Blade quickly formed in the Supreme Heavenly Venerate's hand. The next moment, the image suddenly solidified and slashed out. Dense and suffocating psionic energy surged and exploded. It was as if the area visible to the naked eye had been dyed a deep blue. The translucent energy covered all directions. God suddenly came back to his senses and hurriedly responded. Layers of energy shields popped out, but under the attack of the Supreme Heavenly Venerate, they shattered into pieces of light that filled the sky like fragile pieces of glass. He wanted to dodge, but he felt that he was firmly locked onto. Due to the interference of the space stabilization anchor, he could not use teleportation. God clenched his teeth and gathered what little energy he had left. He activated his offensive Esper ability and fought head-on. A black and red beam shot out and hit the blade of the Emperor's Sky Splitter Blade, splitting it in half. The blade only paused for a moment before slashing down at even faster speed. The stream of light of the Geta Ripple Fist flowed, compressed, and condensed on the blade, forming a huge light blade. Bang! A large mass of flesh and blood mixed with strength suddenly exploded, turning into ashes halfway through its flight. God's figure flew out, and half of his body was shattered by the blade. When God was sealed the last time, he had just been beaten up by Han Zhao. His health was low to begin with, and the power of this slash instantly injured him heavily. If not for him activating his recovery Esper ability, God would have been killed instantly. Before he could adjust, Han Zhao's fist holding the blade hit the air, creating a ring-shaped blue shockwave that quickly caught up to God's figure and swept over. Bang! 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 A series of explosions suddenly occurred on God's body. It was as if he had suffered tens of thousands of heavy blows at the same time. Dense dents appeared on his body, and his entire person was almost beaten into a lump of meat. He did not look human anymore, and he could not move at all. God still had a breath left, and he crazily activated his recovery Esper ability. Flesh continued to grow out, wanting to recover. However, at this time, the thrusters on the back of the Supreme Heavenly Venerate spewed out a thick tail flame, and the explosive speed increased. The blade turned, leaving behind a dazzling slash mark that burned the retina. The huge body was unbelievably agile, and it brushed past ES God. Shio! The light slashed past ES God's body, and his recovery stopped instantly. His life force disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. He controlled his newly grown head with difficulty and turned to look at the supreme heavenly venerate behind him. Complicated emotions flashed through his eyes. There was realization, envy, relief, and relief. You didn't disappoint me. You have indeed stepped into the level of my dream. At least before I die, I can see a higher power. It's worth it. The intermittent mental fluctuations squeezed out the last of his strength. The next moment, ES God's body dissipated in front of everyone, turning into stars that filled the sky and disappearing. ES God was killed in 3 straight attacks. Tenny's expression froze, and his eyes widened in disbelief. Black Star had once killed a Beyond Grade A in 1 hit, but that was all in terms of tactics. Most of the time, it was a style of fighting where the heavens and earth would live together. However, this seemed to be the first time such a feat of instantly killing a peak Beyond Grade A in a head-on battle. It was as easy as a Beyond Grade A fighting a Calamity Grade. This was a Transcendent Grade. With just 2 or 3 moves, it was impossible to gather much information about Black Star's abilities. However, the tip of the iceberg was already shocking enough. Tenny could not help but gulp. He deeply doubted whether an individual of this level was still in existence that a fleet could deal with. What? On the other side, God was also stunned. He had thought that Black Star would still have a fierce battle with his main body, but he did not expect that in the blink of an eye, Black Star would easily kill his main body in 2 or 3 moves, completely crushing his hope. What shocked him the most was the fact that Black Star had already stepped into a higher level of power. A deep sense of powerlessness filled God's entire body. He had wasted so many years, committed countless evil deeds, abandoned precious things one after another, and even changed his body, but he still did not achieve this dream. However, Black Star had easily fulfilled his lifelong wish. I hate it so much. Under normal circumstances, God would still have the mentality to chase after him. But now that his abilities had been taken away and his main body had been killed, there was no chance. For a moment, he felt as if all his energy had been sucked away, leaving only an empty shell without a soul. God would rather be trapped in the space-time amber forever than experience this series of despair. At this moment, he fell into depression. Chapter 14:15. Just as everyone was having their own thoughts, the body of the supreme heavenly venerate on the battlefield shrank, and the mechanical soldiers returned to Han Zhao's body, revealing his original figure. Han Zhao looked at the spot where ES God had died, and a glint flashed across his eyes. Just as he was emptying ES God's health, he suddenly had a strong intuition. He had the illusion that his attack might be able to cross dimensions and affect the opponent's information form level. However, this feeling disappeared in a flash and could not be grasped. If I destroy the enemy's physical body and information form projection together, I'm afraid I can fundamentally eliminate the enemy's existence. This way, the sanctum, the world tree, the underworld, and other methods might not be able to revive him. Han Zhao thought to himself. He suddenly had this idea mainly because of information uniqueness, conceptual immortality. If all Transcendent Grade Supers had this ability, then the experts of the same level should have a countermeasure. If only Transcendent Grade Supers could kill Transcendent Grade Supers, then they should have lethality on the information and conceptual level. I've only stepped into the Transcendent Grade not long ago. It seems like there are still more hidden powers at this level that haven't been completely unlocked. Han Zhao calmed himself down and flew back to the Dynasty's flagship. As soon as he returned to the command room, everyone turned to look at him with different expressions. Han Zhao ignored him. He glanced at God's expression and casually said, "How is it? Are you happy to see your main body after so long?" God remained silent. He was filled with hatred, but he did not dare to speak, afraid that he would not be able to control his anger and confess. Furthermore, Black Star's strength had already made him despair. At this moment, Tenny walked over with a complicated look in his eyes. Then, he became firm again and said with an unfriendly tone, "Your Excellency Black Star, you've killed him. ES God will soon become your hired thug. It's time for you to fulfill your end of the deal." "What hired thug?" God was slightly stunned and confused. However, no one answered his question. Han Shao turned to look at Hela. Hela understood and showed the mark of the underworld, indicating that ES God's soul had been sent into the underworld. Seeing this, Han Shao smiled casually and replied, "Of course, of course. Of course, we each take what we need. I'll return this person to you." Then, he lifted God's body and threw it in front of Tenny as if he was throwing trash. Tenny could not be bothered with Han Zhao's attitude. He asked someone to help God up and sensed for a while. Suddenly, he realized that something was wrong with God's condition. "Sir God, are you all right?" God clenched his teeth. Without waiting for him to finish, Hela continued coldly, "We've already taken away his ability. He's now a cripple." "What?" Tenny was shocked and hurriedly checked carefully. Only then did he confirm this. Furthermore, from the looks of the injuries, it was something that had happened recently. It was obvious that Black Star had done this not long before the deal. He could not help but be shocked and furious. "Black Star, how dare you? Take a break. Let Marbruce come out and talk to me. You should be watching." Han Shao ignored him. Tenny was stunned. He glared at Han Shao and turned around to give some orders. More than 10 seconds later, a remote projection appeared. It was Marbruce, staring at Han Shao with a gloomy expression. "Black Star, this is not the deal we agreed on. Is that so? But I remember that the deal only said to hand over the person. Isn't he in your hands now?" Han Shao did not care. "Stop quibbling. You know what I mean." Marbruce was furious. They had made a deal with Black Star because they wanted to exchange for a direct descendant with super high-risk Esper abilities, not a cripple. The current situation made him feel as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a fly. Energy control was an ability with a bright future. As long as he was nurtured well, he would definitely be able to enter the ranks of the top combatants. However, direct beyond grade A with great potential was crippled just like that. Marbruce was so angry that smoke was about to come out of his mouth. Not only him, but all the Dynasty officers in the cabin had unfriendly expressions as they stared at Han Shao and the others. They felt a common enemy for God, a direct descendant of the Dynasty. If not for the big picture, they would have fired directly. "All right, don't look like you have a deep grudge. We haven't finished talking yet." Han Shao waved his hand. "Didn't you want an explanation?" Marbruce suppressed his anger and shouted with a deep voice, "Speak, you better satisfy us. You think God is a pure direct descendant of the Dynasty, but his true identity is ES God." When he was captured, Han Shao could not be bothered to respond to his words. He slowly explained the split personality caused by Esper ability rebirth. "So what you're saying is that you killed God and imprisoned him for so many years because he's an unstable factor and might have attracted the World Tree in advance. However, ES God doesn't know about this doppelganger, and only God knows his identity. Don't you think this is too ridiculous?" Marbruce frowned. Han Zhao's expression was calm. "I know you don't believe me. Anyway, I've already given you the person. If you have some courage, you can dig out evidence from him yourself." It would be very difficult for him to use God's memories as evidence. The Dynasty would only think that it was fake. As a direct member who was in trouble, God would not suffer the treatment of having his memories searched just because of the suspicion of an outsider. The three universal civilizations would not easily use such methods on direct members, as it would easily damage their loyalty. Furthermore, direct members would resist. However, even if the Dynasty was willing to search God's memories, they would still suspect that he had done something and deliberately planted fake evidence. There was no way to completely prove God's true identity, and Han Shao did not care if the Dynasty believed it or not. As expected, Marbruce did not believe this saying at all. He only felt that it was Black Star's excuse. He said with a deep voice, "I'm very dissatisfied with this explanation. According to what you said, we have to thank you? You should indeed thank me." Han Shao did not care. He could explain it properly, but there was no need for that. Using this matter, He planned to change his previous image. Because he had cooperated with the three universal civilizations to fight against the enemies together, he had built a training base together and provided a lot of help, causing his image in the eyes of the three universal civilizations to become too righteous. When he stepped into the transcendent grade, it was the most mysterious time. He could take this opportunity to increase the distance between them and strengthen his unpredictable image in the eyes of the three universal civilizations, making them feel that the increase in his strength had changed his personality. This was very common. This way, the three universal civilizations would be more careful in handling the relationship between the two sides and recalibrate their attitude toward him. It was best not to be too sincere when interacting with these advanced civilizations. The upper echelons of both sides knew that they would be enemies sooner or later. It was useless to talk about making friends now. Marbru's breathing quickened. After a few seconds, he calmed down and said coldly, "We will investigate this matter internally and find out the truth as soon as possible." He really wanted to fall out with him, but he did not dare. Even if the dynasty did so, Radiance and Ethereal would not go crazy with them. "Up to you." Han Shao waved his hand. "Also, you have to give me an explanation for crippling God's Esper ability. Don't tell me that it's still an unstable factor." "That's right. If he continues to hold this power, there's a high chance that he'll participate in the war. With his special feelings for the World Tree, he might cause something we don't want to see. I know you don't have the courage to cripple a direct descendant, so I helped you solve this hidden danger. You still have to thank me." "Black Star." Marbruce laughed in anger. "Can you be more shameless? I'm just telling the truth. It's your problem whether you accept it or not." Han Zhao's tone was calm. Marbruce clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. After a while, he suppressed his anger and said with a deep voice, "No matter what reason you have, it's too wasteful to lose a super high-risk Esper ability like energy control just like that. If we nurture it well, this ability will be a powerful way to deal with the World Tree." Black Star's strength, status, and influence made him feel helpless. He could only blame Han Shao from a different perspective, and he was indeed very sad about the disappearance of the super high-risk Esper ability energy control. "I agree with you on this." Han Shao nodded. "But don't worry, I didn't completely destroy this ability. It can still be used on the battlefield." Marbruce was stunned. He subconsciously looked at God, thinking that Han Shao was talking about not castrating God completely. However, at this moment, Han Shao patted Evan's shoulder and said, "I've already transplanted this ability to Evans. Compared to God, his potential is more worth nurturing." Hearing this, everyone looked over in unison, their faces full of doubt and surprise. The energy control Esper ability was transferred to him? Tenny could not help but ask in surprise, "How did you do that? What kind of ability user is he?" This was also what Marbruce was confused about. He stared straight at Han Shao. "I've been secretly nurturing Evans for decades." Han Shao glanced at everyone and said, "His ability is exactly the same as ES Gods. They both absorb other people's Esper abilities for their own use. It was through this method that he was able to seize God's Esper ability gene chain and obtain this super high-risk ability." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was horrified and indescribably astounded. ES God was the nightmare of many organizations. Thankfully, he had already been killed, but now there was another guy with the same ability in the universe. Could this galactic society still recover? Marbruce's pupils constricted as he stared at Han Shao. His heart was in turmoil. Great! Black Star had been trying to nurture a second-generation ES God since decades ago. Perhaps another goal of killing God was to seize energy control. Now, Black Star had an ES God hero spirit in his hands and a second-generation ES God that he was secretly nurturing. Even he could not help but be shaken by this lineup. As if he did not see everyone's expression, Han Shao continued, "How is it? Evan's potential is better than God's, right? Don't worry, I'll do my best to nurture him and let him play a role on the battlefield as soon as possible. So, Marbruce, you don't have to worry about wasting this ability. I'm a very thrifty person." Then I'm relieved. Bruce squeezed out a voice that sounded like he was chewing steel. Very good. Looks like our consensus has deepened. Since the matter is settled, I'll be leaving. After Han Xiao said that, he turned around and left with the two of them without hesitation. Tenny looked at Han Zhao's back and could not help but whisper, "You've changed your mind." "Blackstar, you have changed." Han Xiao stopped in his tracks. "If I don't change, am I waiting to be eaten up by you guys?" He did not say anything and continued to walk away. Very soon, his vehicle drove out of the spaceport of the main ship and disappeared from everyone's sight. Watching Han Xiao and the others leave, the people in the command room were still silent and had complicated feelings. Bruce's mood was gloomy. This change made his stomach sour and disgusted. He really wanted to despise Blackstar, but on second thought, he felt a little dejected. Only they had no right to despise him. If not for Blackstar, the World Tree's iron hooves would have broken through the country's borders. The current situation would not have happened. Although it was contradictory, he had no right to judge Blackstar's character. Take good care of God. Heal his injuries first. After saying that, Bruce sighed and deactivated the remote projection. God watched the entire negotiation between Blackstar and the dynasty. His expression kept changing, and his heart was filled with grief. Originally, he still had a sliver of hope that the dynasty would stand up for his unfair treatment and vent his anger on Blackstar. However, the way the dynasty was restrained and tolerated in front of Blackstar completely shattered his fantasy and his desire for revenge. Even one of the three universal civilizations did not dare to provoke Blackstar. Just what kind of position had this guy climbed to in the past few decades? In my current state, if I were to provoke Blackstar again, it would be like striking a rock with an egg. God lamented in his heart. It was as if his bones had been sucked out. However, he still had one doubt. He turned to look at Tenny and whispered, "You guys said that you were talking about ES God. You guys said that Blackstar turned ES God into a fighter. What's going on? Isn't ES God dead?" Tenny looked at him with a complicated expression. Blackstar said that God was ES God. Although he did not believe it, he could not help but be a little wary. Tenny thought for a while before replying. "You were in prison for a while. You've been locked up for decades, so you might not know this, but Blackstar has subdued a pair of sisters. The Esper abilities of these sisters are exactly the same as the life and death sisters in history. They have also opened up the underworld dimension and can turn the undead into hero spirits to serve as their subordinates. Although ES God was killed, his soul was thrown into the underworld dimension and became their subordinate. Now, there should be more than 10 beyond grade A hero spirits." As soon as he said that, God's eyes widened. On the other side, in the underworld dimension, ES God slowly opened his eyes, and a pitch-black, boundless land appeared in front of him. "Am I dead?" ES God lowered his head and saw that his body had turned into a translucent spirit state. He could not help but mutter to himself. The scene before his death appeared again. The overwhelming sword light had killed the life force of all his cells in one strike, making him tremble from the depths of his soul. He could not help but reminisce. However, not long after, he realized that his condition was not right. His soul was clearly like a candle in the wind, but did not show any signs of dissipating. Instead, it became more and more solid. Whoosh! At this time, a few rays of light flashed. Han Xiao and the others used the king to teleport to the surroundings and flew in front of ES God. "What did you do to me?" ES God frowned. "Don't worry, it's a good thing for you. Do you really think I can bear to kill you?" Han Xiao chuckled. "What are you doing? Don't worry, it's a good thing for you. This is the underworld. It can stabilize souls." Before Han Xiao could finish, ES God's eyes widened, and he interrupted him with a surprised tone. "The legendary underworld? Oh, you know?" Han Xiao paused and raised his brows. "Of course I know." ES God nodded. As a collector of super high-risk Esper abilities, he had collected the information of all the beyond grade A Esper in history. And such amazing people like the Life and Death Sisters were naturally the focus of his attention. Thus, he had seen all the records of the underworld. "That's easy. It saves me the time to explain." Han Xiao smiled. The life and death Esper abilities of this generation all have masters. They repaired the underworld and restored the effects in history. You're already an undead now. Are you willing to accept the transformation of the underworld and become an eternal hero spirit? Hesitation flashed across God's eyes. If he could live, he did not want to die. However, joining the underworld was equivalent to losing his freedom. He would probably never be free. Seeing this, Han Shao smiled and said, I know your concerns. This is actually not a bad thing. You should know your own lifespan better than me. You don't have long to live anyway. As long as you give up a part of your freedom, you can live forever in the underworld. Furthermore, your body will change, and you won't have to worry about the pressure of your genetic chain anymore. Your combat strength will only be stronger than when you were alive. Why not? God's eyes flickered, and he suddenly said with a deep voice, Black Star, we've known each other for many years. Although you stepped into a higher level first, my goal has not changed. If I join the underworld, I won't have the chance to advance any further. You don't have the chance to begin with. Even if I don't kill you, you won't be able to advance. Don't doubt my judgment. As someone who's been through it, I know better than you what it takes to advance. Han Shao shook his head. He was not lying. God's genetic chain was overloaded, and his life form would be even more unstable during his promotion. Furthermore, with his terrible relationships, no pinnacle beyond grade A would be willing to help him advance. It would be difficult for him to fulfill the 3 requirements. Seeing that God was silent, Han Shao thought for a while and smiled. However, you don't have to be discouraged. Your dream can be fulfilled by your heir. Heir? God was confused. Han Shao waved his hand and got Evans to come over. This guy is called Evans. He inherited your ability and can take the Esper abilities of others. Can't he inherit your will and help you see the scenery at a higher level? The same ability as me. God was shocked and sized Evans up carefully. Evans also displayed his ability at the right time, proving that Han Shao was not lying. Seeing this, God was even more shocked. You can't be my illegitimate son, right? Evans' face darkened, but he did not say anything. Han Shao smiled and said, How would I know? Let me think. God frowned and fell into his memories. When he was wreaking havoc in the galaxy, he had naturally found females of different species to vent his desires. However, they were all left to fend for themselves after mating. He did not know if they left behind any children. The more he thought about it, the more God felt like he was missing a part of his memories. This time, Han Shao said, There's no need to be so conflicted. The probability of having the same Esper ability is even rarer than having children, not to mention an extremely rare ability like yours. With my nurturing, Evans did not take the wrong path. Although he has few abilities now, his talent is not inferior to yours. Why don't you nurture him and let him fulfill your wish? God was silent for a while before he suddenly laughed and said with a teasing tone, To put it bluntly, you just want me to help you nurture your combat strength and work for you. Han Shao did not stand on ceremony. Evans has too little combat experience and doesn't know how to use his various abilities. This is your strength, so please guide him. I haven't promised you yet. Do you have a choice? Han Shao raised his brows. That's what I admire the most about you. God laughed for some reason, looked at Evans, nodded, and slowly said, Life is unpredictable. Life is really unpredictable. This is the first time I'm teaching someone. All right, I'll teach you how to use this ability to fight. I only have one request. If one day you can step into a higher level, help me beat up Black Star. Oh, how scary. Han Shao clicked his tongue. Evans looked at Han Shao and then at God. Seeing that both of them were staring at him, he finally nodded hesitantly. Seeing this, God opened his arms with a calm expression. Come, turn me into a hero spirit. Let this world see what I look like without any burden. Chapter 14:16. The hero spirit modification ceremony was ongoing, and on a black mountain peak in the distance, the 10 Vajras of the underworld were standing there, looking up at Han Shao and the others in the sky. Their gazes were focused on ES God, who was undergoing the transformation. Humph! Black Star brought in another newcomer. Aegon Vardnads crossed his arms coldly and snorted. Why isn't this newcomer resisting? Could it be that he came in willingly? I thought he would be taught a lesson like Old 9 and Old 10 before accepting his fate. Old 4, who had no sense of presence, teased. The corners of Old 10 Dylan's eyes twitched, and he did not speak with a cold expression. In the end, he was still taught to accept his fate. Instead of suffering endless torture, he might as well come out and enjoy limited freedom. He could only hope that Black Star would keep his promise in the future and remove his hero spirit identity so that he could recover normally. Humph! Who cares if this newcomer is willing or not? I'm going to teach him the rules anyway. Aegon Vardnad snorted. Back then, he had been taught a lesson and had only compromised in the end. He was not willing to see the newcomers join the underworld so easily. Sorokin adjusted his vision and saw the scene in the distance clearly. He could not help but raise his brows with a playful expression. I don't think you can teach him a lesson. A powerful guy has come this time. How powerful? Can you be stronger than me? Dylan interrupted calmly. You? Sorokin turned around, looked him up and down, and sneered. I'm afraid you won't even be able to take him on with one hand. Dylan was unhappy. They're both peaked beyond Great S. How can he be stronger than Black Star? If he had that ability, why would he enter the underworld? Sorokin smiled, but did not say anything. He was from the same era as ES God, but the others were different. They did not know ES God, and only he knew how strong ES God was when combined with the underworld's mechanisms. However, Sorokin changed the topic with a smile. No matter how strong he is, his seniority is still behind us. He's old 11. On the other side, Han Shao also noticed the movements of the 10 hero spirit kings of the underworld. He turned around and glanced at them, the corners of his lips curling up. The 10 great guardian deities of the underworld had evolved into the Lightning 11. They had finally gathered enough to form a football team. However, ES God was easy to talk to because he had a bigger fist. It did not mean that he would treat others the same way. He was not someone who would submit to others easily. It would not be so easy to make him obediently be the 11th. After a while, the transformation of the hero spirit was finally completed. ES God opened his eyes again, felt the form of the hero spirit, and nodded in appreciation. The fusion of the power of life and death forms a perfect and harmonious structure. This is the ultimate control of arcana. The underworld can be called a space wonder. The two sisters in history are indeed amazing. Even if I were to develop these two abilities, I might not be able to do better than them. Hela didn't like it when others used such a guiding tone with her. However, the other party was the god of supernatural abilities, an absolute master in the field of supernatural abilities, so she didn't say anything. She just snorted to express her slight dissatisfaction. At this moment, the 10 great Vajras of the underworld saw that the ceremony had ended. They all gathered around to get to know the newcomers. Sorokin took the lead and greeted them. Yo, look who's here. I thought you would be locked in a dark prison forever. How did you get released and even become a member of the underworld? Sorokin, you're here too? ES God's gaze swept over. Hee, looks like you've been locked up for too long. You don't know what happened all these years. Sorokin shrugged, pointed at the hero spirits beside him, and said, Let me introduce you. These 7 are beyond grade, as who joined the underworld during the exploration era. These 2 are historical beyond grade, as who were revived by Black Star. They're both peak beyond grade as. We're all hero spirit kings of the underworld, revived? ES God's eyes flashed with interest. He turned to look at Han Shao, smiled, and said, Looks like you've done a lot in the past 100 years I was in prison. What else? Do you think I've been doing nothing all these years? Han Shao shook his head. In the past 100 years, the structure of the galaxy has changed a lot. You can find Sorokin to understand these things. You two know each other, so he'll definitely be happy to introduce you. That's right, as long as you owe me a promise coin. Don't look so confused. Come. Let me introduce you to the currency of the underworld. Sorokin was extremely enthusiastic and could not wait to introduce the financial system he had created. However, before he could say anything, Dylan interrupted him. He narrowed his eyes and sized ES God up. I haven't asked for your name yet. What's your name? ES God turned to look at him. You don't need to know my name. Just call me ES God. What does that mean? The god of Esper abilities. Dylan laughed and said sarcastically, how many powerful Espers in history did not dare to call themselves that? Old 11, are you worthy of this name? Old 11, ES God raised his brows and counted the people in front of him. He immediately understood that they were ranked according to order. You're not convinced? Dylan scoffed. If we were still alive, you would be dead by now. ES God's tone was calm. As a thug who made the Galactic Society tremble in fear, he was not a good-tempered person. Sure, let's fight. Sorokin said that you're very strong. I want to see how you're going to kill me. Dylan sneered. He remembered Sorokin's words and did not believe it. Anyway, they were all hero spirits who could not die. If they were not convinced, they could fight. Who was afraid of who? Han Shao could not help but glance at him. He did not find it strange. Dylan had a foul mouth and the ability to taunt others. He liked to cause trouble to begin with. Furthermore, after accepting the identity of a hero spirit, this guy no longer had any worries. It was as if he had released his nature. His foul mouth became even worse, and he could taunt as he pleased. They were all hero spirits, and without Aurora giving them life, no one could make a move. Dylan probably enjoyed being unhappy with him, but could not do anything about it. What do you say? ES God turned to look at Han Shao. In that case, Aurora and I will temporarily give you bodies. You guys will be ranked again, and strength will be respected. Hella's eyes lit up. She was the happiest to watch others fight, so she immediately made the decision. I agree. Sorokin's eyes lit up, and he immediately expressed his stance. Although he was not the strongest among the hero spirit kings, he was definitely ranked at the top. At least, he did not have to continue being the 8th. Not bad. That's exactly what I wanted. Dylan snorted and pointed at ES God. I hope you can let me enjoy myself. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll use you to celebrate my rebirth. ES God paused, turned to look at Evans, and said calmly, this time, I'll use this ability to fight this battle. This time, I'll demonstrate the combat style of this ability to you. Watch carefully and learn. Evans immediately perked up. Not long after, Aurora was called over by Hela to create bodies for the many hero spirit kings. She was almost squeezed dry. Han Shao brought the group to the main universe and found a desolate universe built as the battlefield. 3 days later, the 11 of them returned to the underworld in their hero spirit forms. They did not mention anything about the battle and only silently rearranged their seats. ES God became the big brother, Dylan became the second, Sorokin became the third, and Aegon Vardnads became the fourth. Although there was only one position between first and second, there was a huge gap in combat strength. As a spectator, Han Shao finally saw how strong ES God was when he was at his peak. He was much stronger than when he was alive, and beating up Dylan was like playing with him. The battle between the two of them could only be described as devastating. In Han Zhao's opinion, he might be the only one in the entire universe who could defeat ES God. The others would at most be on par with him. ES God was not afraid of anyone other than himself. Werno's chances of winning were even lower than Herberlin's. Even if his energy rank was higher, he might not be ES God's match. After all, he was an Esper. As long as he was touched by Esper silence, he would be dead meat. On the other side, in the 3 Universal Civilizations joint conference room, the 3 leaders had just finished a meeting and were organizing the documents. At this time, Lewis thought of something and looked at Marbruce. How's the deal with Black Star going? I heard that God has returned. Marbruce paused and nodded slowly. The ethereal Pope narrowed his eyes and slowly said, so God was really captured by Black Star. How did your dynasty deal with it? We're still investigating the inside story. You don't have to worry about the details. Marbruce shook his head. Seeing this, the two of them guessed that the dynasty had most likely suffered because of Black Star and could not help but laugh. The ethereal Pope coughed and said calmly, Black Star is fully fledged. Don't worry about him for now. No matter what, we've welcomed back a direct beyond grade A with extraordinary potential. In the future, he will definitely become an important pillar of our individual strength. Congratulations on obtaining a new national pillar. Nurture Godwell. Because he had Wernos at home who was preparing to advance to the transcendent grade, the ethereal pope was very open-minded and did not care that the dynasty had obtained God again. Furthermore, from the standpoint of the three universal civilizations, this was a good thing for both of them. Hearing this, Marbrus's heart skipped a beat. Others still thought that God was still that super high-risk Esper ability owner with endless potential. Now that they were congratulating him for obtaining a potential stock, it was a form of mockery. Marbrus did not want the two of them to know that the dynasty had made a loss this time and exchanged ES God for a cripple. He could only suppress his anger and force a stiff smile. At the border of the flickering world, giant engineering ships cruised in space one after another. Planetary-grade collection devices surrounded the planets and carried out destructive development. They drained the star cores, crushed the planets, and disintegrated them into various substances that flowed into the giant storage cabins. They swept through the starry sky like a swarm of locusts, leaving only desolation wherever they passed. The several star clusters at the border of the flickering world were originally areas with rich resources. Now, under the destruction and development of the three universal civilizations, they were gradually turning into desolate universe belts. They were being transformed into strategic areas that would welcome the future attacks of the World Tree. All the valuable resources were taken away, leaving nothing for the World Tree. At this moment, at the edge of the development area, a small dynasty fleet was escorting an ordinary spaceship with the Black Star Corps logo away. In the spaceship, Pork Bun was organizing the materials he had collected on this trip. The players around him all had the ID of Pork Bun's studio. They were all Pork Bun's employees. It's a pity that the dynasty doesn't allow us to go deep into the development area. This time, we only collected some scraps. It's not enough to make a video explaining the three universal civilizations' preparations. Pork Bun's side, not satisfied with the harvest of this trip. Be content. The three universal civilizations have already made an exception by agreeing to let us take a look at the edge. His assistant, Little Wheat, curled his lips. Currently, most of the players were participating in the harassment battle at the front lines, but Pork Bun did not stay at the front lines all the time. This was because there were only battle reports coming and going, and it was not convenient to make a video. He keenly felt that the changes at the back were more valuable, so he brought a group of studio employees back to the explored universe to collect news. Not long after, Pork Bun set his eyes on the two news points of the Black Star training base and the three universal civilizations preparations. However, the training base did not allow outsiders to enter, so he could only observe the latter. Pork Bun was more popular in some departments of the three universal civilizations. First, the accounts under his studio all focused on charisma, specializing in building good relationships with various people. Second, Pork Bun constantly promoted himself and pulled in many players to be his endorsers, letting the three universal civilizations know that he had a special influence among the immortals and became the exclusive media of the immortals. Third, he had the special identity of a reporter from the Black Star Corps. His studio was attached to the Army's intelligence department and was an officially recognized branch with a news license. Therefore, in the eyes of the three universal civilizations, Pork Bun represented the special intelligence personnel of the Black Star Corps immortals. He had some face and could talk business and cooperation with various organizations as a player. This was also what some guilds did. With so many conveniences, Pork Bun Studios' business was thriving. He submitted a visit request to the three universal civilizations. After some negotiation, Pork Bun and the others finally received permission to come to the edge of this border development zone to take a look. However, the harvest was not as expected, so they were now on their way back. What should I do? Although I don't lack material now, it's all old news. I need sensational news. Pork Bun tugged at his hair, his face full of distress. At this time, a chat notification popped up on the forum. An employee had sent him a private message, looking very excited. "Boss, I have a major discovery. The material this time will definitely scare you to the point of premature ejaculation." Port Bun looked at his ID and remembered that this was the small supervisor in charge of the dynasty's regional news material. He immediately perked up. "Cut the F asterisk king crap. Tell me, what did you find?" "This is news that one of my subordinates found out from a dynasty logistics officer. It said that not long ago, Black Star went to kill ES God and showed his strength beyond the beyond grade A realm. He even handed over God." This small supervisor spoke frankly. He did not know about the deal between Black Star and ES God, only talking about what he did on the surface. However, this was enough to shock Port Bun. "Is this news true?" Port Bun felt his bladder tighten. "Then I don't know. That employee of mine has a very good relationship with that dynasty officer. Anyway, I found out from him. It said that this officer was at the scene. Well done. The fun spent over the years haven't gone to waste." Port Bun slammed the table in excitement. His studio was not small now. He had set up regional branches in some large organizations and asked his employees to make friends with the people from the various departments of these organizations. He put all his points into the charm attribute and made good connections. He had been investing money to form an intelligence network, and he would occasionally get insider information from these people. Of course, with his personal assets, he would not be able to set up such a huge business. He had sponsors behind him. The biggest sponsor was Black Star himself. Port Bun thought that Han Zhao's favorability toward him was high enough, which was why he got the funding. He had been very pleased with himself. This insider information was the biggest news he had ever received. Although he did not know the reason, just the fact that Black Star broke through to the beyond grade A realm and that God's disappearance was related to Black Star was enough for him to make an interesting video. Even if it was just groundless speculation, it was enough to attract people's attention. Port Bun made a prompt decision and slammed the table. "Send the material over quickly. The video must be released in 3 days. You guys have to work hard too. I'm going to be famous again." Chapter 14:17. The underworld rearranged the seats. Evan stayed behind to receive ES God's teachings for the time being, while Han Xiao returned to the training base to enter seclusion. He used the new level of power to update the various types of machinery under his banner and study some profound blueprints. The dynasty was tricked, but they did not do anything. They held in their anger and remained silent. God's whereabouts were also sealed. Han Xiao did not know what the dynasty would do with God in the future. Perhaps they were thinking of a way to recover his abilities. In any case, it was impossible for this guy to appear in the outside world in the short term. The storm caused by his advancement to the transcendent grade slowly subsided. After the initial shock, the 3 universal civilizations also accepted reality and returned to normal. A few days later, in the Black Star Corps' private machinery factory, Han Xiao stood in front of an experiment table and stared at a floating hourglass-shaped device. Dense mechanical force was emitted from his body, connecting the device like a chain. The space at both ends of the device vibrated faintly. So, this is the principle of psionic waves. TSK. The lethality of this technology is not simple. It's indeed black technology. If combined with a universal treasure-level launcher, it will be a large-scale strategic slaughter weapon. I've picked up a treasure this time. Excitement flashed across Han Zhao's eyes. After these days of research, he finally understood the psionic wave technology. In his eyes, this thing was an absolute weapon for group battles. First of all, it would absorb external energy and automatically increase its attack range. With some time, it would even be able to cover the galactic battlefield. However, it was more controllable and would not spread endlessly. Secondly, it was as difficult to block and clean up as the primordial psionic energy. In fact, because the psionic wave's explosive form was a shock wave and not a solid energy cluster like the primordial psionic energy, the speed at which it spread was much faster and harder to block. Furthermore, it could ignore matter to a large extent, and its penetrative power was astonishing. Thirdly, it could destroy different forms of energy. When any form of energy could activate the launcher, The form of energy input was the type of energy targeted by the psionic wave, and it could be mixed. If dark energy was input, the psionic wave would feed on dark energy and destroy the shields, physical devices, and energy cores made or maintained by dark energy. At the same time, it would not affect other forms of energy. Back then, the psionic wave destroyed all the electrical appliances of the Arthur civilization because the experimenters had input electricity. In addition, no matter what kind of energy the psionic wave targeted, it was extremely lethal. Life forms that were not strong enough were swept by the psionic wave and turned into ashes. The entire Arthur civilization was wiped out. The fleets of advanced civilizations are basically powered by dark energy and psionic energy. If we specifically attack these two types of energy, no matter how large the fleet is, it will be paralyzed. The number of troops will be meaningless in front of this technology, and it can be used as the main battle weapon. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. The power of the psionic wave technology was too strong. It was like an enhanced version of the universal EMP. He did not intend to let others use it. Otherwise, it would only threaten him in turn. Mechanics possessed many powerful weapons, but most of them were technologies from advanced civilizations. Thus, most mechanics seemed to lack a representative killing method, but the psionic wave technology could be used as a trump card. If this thing was installed on the Emperor's Skysplitter blade, Han Xiao believed that even if he did not summon a mechanical army, he would still be able to fight the enemy's fleet head-on a galactic battlefield of 1 billion people. With a single slash, 1 million battleships were crippled. How terrifying was that? Han Xiao could not help but imagine this unparalleled scene, and he was in a good mood. Tertius was really a good person. Not only did he provide the Beyonder's vestige to help him advance, but he also indirectly gave him such a powerful black technology weapon. What kind of generous dedication was this? It was simply touching. After being happy for a while, Han Xiao waved his hand, and the psionic wave launcher floating in front of him disappeared. This was not a physical object, but a temporary product transformed using virtual creation, pseudo. During this period of time, he had discovered a new use of this move for research. Originally, Han Xiao only had an incomplete prototype of the psionic wave launcher that he had dug out from the Arthur civilization, so it was very difficult for him to reverse engineer the principles of the technology. However, after dismantling the prototype and figuring out the rough structure and materials used, he used virtual creation, pseudo, to create a temporary product and then reverse engineer the technology on the intact temporary product. This way, the efficiency was thousands of times higher than researching the prototype. It was through this move that he was able to deduce and perfect the principles step by step. Only then did he understand all the tricks in an extremely short period of time and reverse engineer the complete technology. Although this technology is powerful, it still needs to be debugged. It's not suitable for use in actual combat at the moment. Han Xiao went through the information in his mind and nodded. Although the mechanism of the psionic wave was black technology, it still depended on the power and strength. Just because it was difficult to block did not mean that it was unsolvable. After all, it was not an unreasonable space wonder, and it could still be resolved and restrained. For example, even if the dark energy controlled by Claudia was targeted, its control and strength would at most be weakened. It would not be directly disintegrated by the psionic wave. Therefore, in Han Zhao's opinion, there was still room for improvement in the various parameters of this technology. He planned to strengthen it to the extreme and only use this trump card when the time was right. Han Xiao exhaled. With a move of his finger, the experiment table floated away and returned to its original position. He raised his hand and waved. The refrigerator in the corner opened, and a bottle of iced drink flew into his hand. He took a big gulp and relaxed slightly. He opened the forum and prepared to refresh his mood. Now that the battle at the front line was fierce, 80% of the posts on the forum were battle reports. Han Xiao quickly browsed through the posts and suddenly noticed a popular post that was quickly pinned to the top. It was Pork Bun's new video. He went in to take a look and saw that the post was refreshing at a rate of a few hundred posts per second. Han Xiao opened the video and found that the duration of this video was a little short. A large number of comments quickly floated past. First, "It's here, bro. That's it. It's too short. May I ask if this video can be released?" I just cut off the sh*t clip and the video ended. "Trash poor bun, another video. Why don't you come out dressed as a woman and apologize?" To be honest, Port Bun dressed as a woman is really good. It makes me feel like I'm in love at dusk. Brother I've already vomited. My stomach feels much better. Han Xiao glanced at the bullet screen and felt much happier. Only then did he perk up and watch the content of the video. Port Bun dazzled the eyes and said 2 pieces of news in a skillful video language. The first was that Black Star seemed to have broken through the limit of beyond grade A and secretly entered a higher grade. The second was that Black Star seemed to have kidnapped a direct member of the dynasty with unknown motives. These 2 pieces of news were very sensational, and Bun Hit Dog did not waste any material. He added a lot of groundless rumors, making it look like a video of approaching science. There was even a short interview with the dynasty officer who was the source of the information in the video. He even considerately pixelated the other party's face, making it look like a real video. The video was not long, and it ended very quickly. Han Xiao scrolled down and found that many players were surprised by this, mainly focusing on his strength improvement. The army commander has already broken through the limit of beyond grade A. Why is there no news of this outside? Could have been kept a secret. Is there any warrior who can go and find Black Star to confirm the rumors? We will pay our respects to you in the first 7 days. I feel like it's real. The army commander only took 20 to 30 years to become a beyond grade A, and now he has stayed at this grade for 70 to 80 years. It should be normal for him to break through another grade. Previous poster, it's obvious that you haven't studied the history of the evolution of supers in the galaxy. Beyond grade A and above beyond grade A are not the same concept. This is the first example. If it's true, it will make history. Speaking of which, the version this time is called the Black Star Era, which is actually referring to this. I definitely won't be wrong this time. Although the players were also shocked, Black Star had created too many miracles after all. The players' resistance to this was already very high. Their reaction was not "he's so awesome," but "he's still so awesome." Han Xiao did not care too much about the players' reactions. He was just a little surprised that Pork Bun was able to obtain such news. The dynasty had blocked the news, and many large intelligence organizations did not know anything about it. It could only be said that the players were indeed omnipresent. Thankfully, this news is only circulating among the players, and there is no absolute evidence. It's all just speculation, and the impact is limited. Han Xiao shook his head. He did not want too many people to know about his advancement for the time being, but he did not plan to seal it or disguise it. If the players knew, so be it. After browsing the forums for a while and looking at the praises of the army players, Han Xiao closed the interface with a smile and prepared to continue studying the technology. This time, Philip suddenly appeared. "Master Rista wants to see you, Han Xiao then remembered that he still had this person under him. "I'll let him come over." After a while, a humanoid light appeared in the room, and Rista bowed to Han Xiao. "Your Excellency Black Star, it's been a while since we last met. As you know, I've been quite busy recently. How are the compatriots I saved the last time?" Han Xiao asked. "Thank you for your care. My compatriots have already reproduced many new people, and the AI civilization has also been rebuilt. They have been recuperating for decades." "That's good. Why are you looking for me this time?" "Your Excellency Black Star, although our civilization has been rebuilt, most of our compatriots are still controlled by the Mecha Empire and are in deep trouble. You have a respected position now, so I would like to ask for your help again." Hearing this, Han Xiao raised his brows and remembered this mission that had been waiting for many years. The requirement was to liberate the AI civilization members under Manison, and it had not been completed yet. This matter. All right, it's time to resolve it. Han Xiao thought about it and agreed. He felt a little bad for making Rista wait for so many years. Rista's compatriots had been transformed into indestructible mechanical troops, and they were old Manison's trump card. In the past, It was not easy for him to deal with this problem, but now that he had advanced to the transcendent grade, there was a way to solve it. In front of Rista, Han Shao took out his communicator and called Manison. After a while, the call went through, and Manison's figure appeared on the virtual screen. "What's the matter? Damn, this be asterisk starred can't even be bothered to greet me now." The corners of Han Zhao's mouth twitched. "I want to make a deal with you. Speak. Why is this cold attitude back? Are you a transcendent now? Or am I a transcendent?" Han Shao cursed inwardly and could not be bothered to argue. He slowly said, "I want to exchange for the artificial intelligence civilization you captured. You want me to release the indestructible mechanical troops?" Manison narrowed his eyes. If someone else had made this request, he would not have bothered, but Han Shao was different. Manison thought for a moment and did not reject immediately. He nodded and said, "Then give me the method to advance to the transcendent grade in exchange." "Are you still asleep? There's no harm in trying." Manison's tone was calm. "Then, what are you going to give me in exchange? This is my painstaking work. Don't count on the complete advancement method, but I can tell you one of the conditions for the advancement. Also, I'll give you another group of artificial intelligence lives and let you transform them into the indestructible Mecha Empire." "Okay, deal. Also, you have to help me pay for the cost of rebuilding the indestructible Mecha Empire." Manison nodded. "Are you very poor recently?" Han Shao curled his lips. "I'm not as rich as you. I'm just an ordinary peak beyond grade A mechanic. How can I compare to the first transcendent grade mechanic in history?" Manison's lips curled up slightly. Han Shao, "Oh my God, old Manison has learned to be sarcastic. My youth, oh, it's long over." After finalizing the details of the agreement, Han Shao put away the communicator and looked at Rista. "He has already agreed. When I go to the mechanical race, I'll be able to bring your compatriots back. Our entire race will always remember your kindness." Rista was extremely grateful. He sighed that his investment back then was too correct. He had only taken one more look at you in the crowd, and he had accurately hugged the thickest thigh in the galactic society. The problem that had troubled him for many years was solved with just a few words. Rista felt that waiting for Black Star to grow up all these years was indeed the right decision. It was not a waste of effort. An hour later, in mechanical races territory, Han Shao had left a throne in a nearby base, so he quickly teleported over and flew to the mechanical races territory. Old Manison's Lord's avatar was already waiting on the landing platform. "I'm here. We're your indestructible mechanical troops." Han Shao looked around, but did not see his target. Manison shook his head. "Give me what I want first." He still remembered that the last time they fought, Black Star had awakened a large number of artificial intelligence lives with a virtual purification, causing him to fail miserably. Therefore, he did not dare call out the mechanical troops at this time, afraid that Black Star would directly snatch the target away and void the deal. He did not have the ability to find trouble with the other party now, so he could only suffer. Han Shao thought about it and knew Manison's concerns. He could not help but laugh. "Why are you so guarded against me? With our relationship, would I cheat you?" Manison almost said that he had cheated him a lot, but after thinking about it, he did not dare to say anything. "Fisk, all right, I'll give it to you first." Han Shao did not mind. After all, Manison did not dare to go back on his word. "Let me see the artificial intelligence life you prepared for me to replace the indestructible mechanical troops first." Manison was still worried. Han Shao rolled his eyes. "All right, summon some mechanical lives." "What for?" "Do you think I'll kidnap an artificial intelligence civilization and give it to you? Of course, you'll provide the raw materials, and I'll conjure them for you. This time, I'll show you the methods of a transcendent. Treat it as a benefit for you." Manison's eyes flickered. He opened the secondary dimensional army box and pulled out a large number of mechanical lives. These were all the people of the mechanical civilization he had created. Seeing this, Han Shao raised his hand and mechanical force flashed. Lightning instantly swept across all the mechanical lives present. The next moment, the bodies of all the mechanical lives changed at the same time, gradually becoming transparent and illusory. Manison's expression changed. He could clearly sense that the mechanical lives were undergoing a miraculous change. They were gradually transforming from mechanical bodies to artificial intelligence lives. What kind of power is that? Manison was shocked. Although he could do something similar, it was to extract the intelligence of a mechanical life and perform a series of complicated operations. It was what a normal mechanic would do. However, Blackstar had directly changed the mechanical life in its physical state, and its mechanical body directly turned into intelligent data. Only a mechanic would know how unbelievable this was. It was almost a miracle in his eyes. Don't look so shocked. I can directly change living beings into virtual artificial intelligence lives. They are my bargaining chips. Han Xiao smiled. Is this the method of a transcendent? Manison muttered to himself, his heart burning. His desire for the transcendent grade became even more intense, and he asked impatiently, "Tell me, what is one of the conditions for advancement?" Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he smiled. Then remember, one of the conditions for advancing to the transcendent grade is to use the ethereal national treasure. Manison's eyes flashed. At this moment, 17 to 18 plans against the arcane church flashed through his mind. He almost wanted to return his old job and be the one cooking tea behind the scenes. Chapter 14:18. Seeing that Manison was deep in thought, Han Xiaoxin secretly smiled. He was not lying. He had indeed used the ethereal national treasure to advance, and it was effective. However, he did not reveal the specific conditions of the stabilizer. As for what Manison would do after he set his eyes on the ethereal national treasure, Han Xiao did not care. After all, he had not found out what could replace the role of the ethereal national treasure. So the ethereal national treasure was indeed the only choice now. He was definitely not deliberately fanning the flames. All kinds of thoughts flashed through Han Zhao's mind. He shrugged and interrupted Manison's thoughts. I can also give you a piece of advice. This is only one of the conditions. Don't try to advance if you don't have absolute confidence. Manison came back to his senses and nodded absent-mindedly. Han Xiao did not say much and changed the topic. All right, I've told you the conditions. It's time for you to fulfill the deal. Hearing this, Manison calmed down and finally summoned the entire artificial intelligence civilization. He quickly removed the bindings between the indestructible mechanical troops and the host computer. Just as he was about to change the underlying logic chain, he suddenly remembered that Han Xiao had virtual purification, so he did not do anything. He nodded and said, "The entire race is here. You can change them back yourself. I won't waste my energy. You're lazier than before." Han Xiao shook his head and raised his hand to cast virtual purification. The halo spread out and quickly swept through the orderly formation of indestructible mechanical troops. The next moment, this group of artificial intelligence life forms immediately broke free from the state of being controlled and quickly regained their original consciousness. They were at a loss and became restless. Han Xiao did not say much to them. His body suddenly emitted a suction force, as though a black hole had suddenly opened up. The godly fortress directly took away all the targets, and he planned to explain to Rista when he returned. After sucking in the entire AI civilization, Han Xiao silently counted the names. Suddenly, he paused and said, "One is missing. You have to return Finette to me too." "I forgot." Manison remembered and summoned Finette. This was the ancestor of the AI civilization. He had not been transformed into an indestructible mechanical troop and had always been his smart assistant. Han Xiao pointed with his finger, and the flickering lightning entered Finette's body. Finette trembled, and his distorted logic quickly returned to normal. "I've recovered." Finette was stunned for a moment before he sorted out his chaotic memories and understood what was happening. He was immediately moved, and according to the records in the database, he bowed solemnly to Han Xiao. "Your Excellency Blackstar, thank you for your help. On behalf of the entire race, I thank you for your help. If you want to thank someone, you should thank Rista. Because of this matter, he has been pestering me for close to 100 years." Han Xiao waved his hand, not taking it to heart. Yes, we do need to thank him properly. Finette sighed. Then, he glared at Manison and said angrily, Mecha Empire, you capture my race, changed my thoughts, and used me as a tool for so many years. I'll get back at you sooner or later. Back then, when the AI civilization was invaded by Manison, he stood up and led his people to resist. He suffered a crushing defeat and was almost wiped out by Manison. The virtual purification would not delete his memories of the past few years. If not for the fact that he could not beat Manison, he would have killed his former master on the spot. Manison glanced at him and didn't respond to him. Han Xiao did not mind. Without his help, this ancestor of the AI civilization basically had no chance of taking revenge on Manison. He casually said, At least you're free now. Come with me, I'll bring you back. Hearing this, Finette no longer bared his teeth at Manison. He accepted Han Xiao's mechanical force and turned into a stream of light that attached to his spaceship. All right, happy transaction. The funds for rebuilding the indestructible mechanical troops will be transferred to you later. I'll be leaving first. You can continue staying at home. Han Xiao waved at Manison and boarded the spaceship. Turning around, he saw Manison standing at the dock and watching his figure go further and further away until it disappeared. Ding! This time, there was a sudden movement on the interface. Han Xiao opened it and saw that it was the notification of the completion of the reboot mission. Tens of billions of experience, 2 awakening points, and a milestone, friend of artificial intelligence. The introduction was that his virtual technology had improved to a certain extent, and it was easier to gain the favor of artificial intelligence life. The effect was basically an enhanced version of artificial intelligence affinity. The more talents, the better, so Han Xiao naturally accepted them. This reboot mission that had accumulated dust on the list for many years also ended with the liberation of the AI civilization and disappeared. Another mission cleared. Nice. Han Xiao raised his brows. Although he did not have obsessive-compulsive disorder, he still felt satisfied seeing the mission list getting cleaner and cleaner. After using the king to teleport back to his base, Han Xiao released Finette and the other artificial intelligence life forms to reunite with the other group led by Rista. After some explanation, the artificial intelligence life forms thanked Han Xiao profusely. Rista and Finette both expressed that if Han Xiao had any orders in the future, they would not hesitate. Han Xiao's interface also had an additional faction relationship with the AI civilization, and it directly rose to reverence. However, now that he had the divine skill, life transformation virtual, the AI civilization was not of much use to him. He did not need these artificial intelligence life forms to work for him. Watching the artificial intelligence life forms leave happily, Han Xiao stopped smiling and stroked his chin thoughtfully. With my current strength and status, some things are convenient for me to do. Perhaps I have a chance to complete that End of Darkness mission. End of Darkness was the most difficult mission he had ever encountered. The EXP reward was worth 1 trillion, and the requirement was to end the human trafficking phenomenon in the galactic society. Under normal circumstances, such a requirement would be impossible to complete. However, the galactic structure had been severely impacted, and it was currently in a tense period. It was in a wartime state, and freedom was restricted. Most of the galactic residents had gathered to seek refuge, and the circulation had plummeted by more than 90%. The black market trade had almost stopped, and it was a suitable stage for a reshuffle. The human trafficking trade was difficult to deal with mainly because of its dispersion and secrecy. In this period of centralization, these two difficulties were greatly reduced. Due to the reduced demand and the increased difficulty of collecting goods, most human traffickers had no choice but to stop their business. At this time, it was undoubtedly twice the result with half the effort. Han Xiao calculated that with his current status, he could leverage hundreds of millions of times more resources than himself. If he shouted the slogan of ending the human trafficking trade, basically all the civilizations would respond, and the 3 universal civilizations would not object. After all, it was not a bad thing to improve public security before the war. In fact, he knew that the three universal civilizations had always had the idea of cracking down on the human trafficking trade, but they had never done so. Most of the social ills were like this. Only when someone like him spoke up would they be taken seriously and dealt with. Otherwise, as long as the problem did not affect some core aspects, the priority would be delayed. Without the instructions of the higher-ups, the management department was rarely willing to take the initiative to add trouble. This kind of thing was difficult to avoid even in the galactic era, and it was even more so for a troublesome matter like the human trafficking trade. However, even if they stopped the human trafficking trade now, it would only last for a while. When the galactic structure stabilized, this business would revive, and it would be difficult to stop it forever. However, that was in the future. As long as there was a period of time when the entire galactic society did not have human trafficking, Han Xiao felt that the mission would be completed. Whether it rebounded in the future or not, it would not affect a mission that had already been completed. Anyway, other than harassing the World Tree troops at the front line, the other organizations have nothing to do. I might as well pull them out to maintain law and order. Han Xiao secretly recorded this matter in his plan and decided to take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to complete this mission in one fell swoop. After all, he did not have to supervise it personally, and it would not reduce his research time. After solving the historical problem of the AI civilization, he focused his energy on the upgrading of his machinery. Soon, more than half a month passed. On this day in the Arcane Church, in the Temple of 10,000 Gods, a large number of fleets protected the area where the Temple of 10,000 Gods was located. Above the Temple of 10,000 Gods, Werno's figure floated in space. Beside him were four direct beyond grade, as with hesitant expressions. God's chosen, are you sure this can help you advance to the transcendent grade? A direct descendant could not help but ask. Wernos glanced at him and said calmly, I'm not nervous. Why are you nervous? The Arcane Church had been preparing for almost a month. They had found all the helpers and planned to help Wernos advance today. Wernos had also been adjusting his condition during this period. His stamina, spirit, and will had all reached their peak. In his opinion, the success rate of this promotion was at least 70%. God's chosen, are you ready? The ethereal Pope's voice came from the communicator. His super pillar was trying to break through to a higher level. This was something worth paying attention to. The ethereal Pope had arranged his schedule a month in advance and specially cleared some schedule in these few days to witness Werno's promotion with his own eyes. Whether or not he could compete with Blackstar in terms of individual strength in the future would depend on this. I can advance at any time. Have you set up the surroundings? Wernos replied calmly, his tone filled with confidence that had been settled for many years. All the aura concealing devices have been activated. We'll try our best not to let the outside world sense the surge of cosmic energy. You can begin. I wish you success in advance. The ethereal Pope nodded and secretly wiped his sweat. He felt that he was even more nervous than the person involved. Hearing this, Wernos exhaled and suddenly activated his energy, charging towards the threshold that had blocked him for many years. Boom! The next moment, a shocking energy storm erupted with him as the center. An extremely dazzling white light shot out from his body as if it had stolen all the colors in the world. It's here. The ethereal Pope widened his eyes in anticipation. Chapter 14:19. The four direct descendants looked at each other and followed Werno's instructions. They raised their hands and released their energy, fusing it into his body. The situation in the field was like adding oil to the fire. The intensity of the energy storm soared and became more and more violent. Wernos, who was in the center, could no longer be seen, leaving only a dazzling light. The aura belonging to Wernos rose steadily, and the four of them could not help but feel their hearts tremble. It seems like it really works? As expected of the publicly acknowledged #1 expert. Although Blackstar was one step ahead, he can still follow closely behind. The four direct descendants communicated telepathically, surprised and delighted. On the other side, the ethereal Pope and the other upper echelons, who were paying attention to this place, felt their hearts in their throats. They felt as nervous as their children going to the examination hall. Their eyes were fixed on the scene of the promotion, not willing to miss a second. They had all heard from Wernos that this promotion was risky. So many of the ethereal upper echelons were sweating. Other than anticipation, they were also worried. Wernos' existence allowed the arcane church to suppress the other two in terms of individual strength. It was very important. If this pillar was sacrificed because of this, it would be a heavy loss. The fleet's sensor radar buzzed nonstop, and the energy detector value rose steadily. This process lasted for a long time. Under everyone's gaze, the energy storm finally began to shrink slowly and was sucked back into his body. Wernos' aura rose to its peak and slowly stabilized. Is he going to succeed? Seeing this, the ethereal upper echelons were overjoyed. They watched this scene with hope in their hearts. Looks like the first transcendent direct descendant is about to appear. The ethereal Pope was overjoyed and heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as he thought that the promotion was about to be completed, the shrinking energy storm suddenly stopped. The next moment, with Wernos as the center, a violent energy exploded, and the energy storm that was sucked into his body swept out at an even faster speed. The dazzling light turned everyone's vision into a vast expanse of white. The loud sound seemed to shake everyone's hearts. Boom! The shields of the surrounding fleet were stimulated, and they did not resist for long before they were filled with cracks. The four direct beyond grade, as closest to the center of the explosion, were even more caught off guard and were sent flying by the violent energy shockwave. They were like shrapnel from a bomb explosion, rolling far away in the universe. What's going on? Why did it suddenly explode? The ethereal Pope was a remote projection and was not affected, but he was shocked and instantly became nervous. Could it be that Wernos failed his advancement and was unfortunately sacrificed and blown to pieces? The ethereal Pope immediately and ordered the four direct descendants and the surrounding fleets to prepare to save him at any time. Fortunately, there was only one wave of energy explosion, and it did not cause any continuous damage to the surrounding fleet. When the energy finished pouring out, the strong light in the center slowly faded, finally revealing Wernos' figure. He floated in midair, and golden blood droplets continued to seep out of every pore. When they landed in the universe, they quickly condensed and turned into golden crystals. They were crystal clear like snowflakes. The energy reading of the radar dropped rapidly, and Wernos' aura was weak. He looked like he was heavily injured and was about to collapse. The surrounding spaceships quickly surrounded him to help, but Wernos waved his hand, indicating that there was no need. He pointed at the temple of 10,000 gods in the distance and grabbed the divinity of a statue through the air. He summoned the incarnation of a god in a beautiful dress and separated it from his body. The original form of this god incarnation was obviously a woman, but it had his face. Although his facial features were gentler, he still looked like a man in female clothes. It was quite eye-catching. As soon as the god incarnation appeared, it splashed out light that filled the sky and merged into Wernos' body. His injuries were quickly suppressed and did not continue to worsen. Although his aura was still weak, it slowly stabilized. Clearly, this god's original form was a god in charge of healing in a certain religious sect. At this moment, the ethereal Pope connected to Wernos again and asked worriedly, "Are you okay? It's just that a lot of my life force has been exhausted. I won't die yet." Wernos spat out a mouthful of golden blood and coughed weakly. "You failed your promotion?" The ethereal Pope's tone was hesitant. "Yes." Wernos nodded weakly. "Didn't you say there was a 70% success rate? Why?" Before the ethereal Pope could finish asking, Wernos interrupted him. "I did it on purpose. I could have successfully advanced, but I stopped it at the last minute." "What?" This answer was out of the Pope's expectations, and he was shocked. He thought that he had failed because he encountered an obstacle in his promotion, but he did not expect that Wernos had done it on purpose. No wonder he looked so seriously injured. Originally, the cells had already successfully sublimated, but he had forcefully interrupted the transformation and forced the genes to return to their original state. It was like going back on your word halfway through a sex change surgery. It would definitely not be beneficial, and it would greatly exhaust your life force. Your cells would also suffer great damage. What do you mean by this? The ethereal Pope was extremely surprised. He knew that Wernos would not do such a thing for no reason. When I was advancing, I realized that something was wrong. My life force did not undergo a large transformation. It was too different from the situation when Black Star advanced. There must be something wrong with my operation, Wernos said with a deep voice. So you're saying that this promotion method is wrong? The ethereal Pope frowned. That's right. It seems like the method to advance to the transcendent grade is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Black Star must have hidden some important conditions. Although Wernos was severely injured by the backlash, his eyes were still sharp. At first, he was very happy that his promotion went smoothly, but the closer he got to the end, the more he felt that something was wrong. Although this promotion could indeed make him stronger, the increase in his strength was far from his expectations of the transcendent grade, which made him suspicious. He had a vague feeling that he would not be able to step into the transcendent grade with this promotion. If he completed the promotion, he would have to reach a new limit the next time he wanted to advance. His potential was almost at its end, and he did not know how long it would take for him to obtain a new promotion opportunity. He might not even have a chance again. This way, his dream of becoming a transcendent would probably turn into a bubble, and he would never be able to step foot into it. After a long struggle, Wernos finally made up his mind. When he was more than halfway through his promotion, he decided to cut his losses. He would rather risk his life and suffer the backlash to stop this promotion. Generally speaking, the promotion process of a super was irreversible, but at Wernos' level, he could already perfectly control everything about himself. It was possible to interrupt the promotion and reverse the transformation. Of course, if a normal person did this, it might cause the collapse of the genetic level. However, the stable characteristic of the ethereal national treasure was one of the reasons why Wernos dared to take the risk. Even if there was damage, it could be greatly reduced. In that case, although he was heavily injured, he only needed to recuperate for a period of time to recover. This precious opportunity to advance would not be wasted. Just like how he had failed to break through to a higher level, this was not the first time he had experienced such a situation. If Han Xiao was here, he would immediately understand the meaning behind Wernos' actions. If Wernos succeeded in his ordinary promotion, with his level, it would undoubtedly be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for him to reach the next promotion threshold by another 20 levels. If he took the initiative to fail the promotion, the opportunity would not be wasted. According to the promotion rules of this level, if he wanted to advance, he only needed to complete a new promotion mission. However, those without an interface should not have a hard requirement for the promotion mission. Perhaps he only needed to train for a period of time to return to his peak state. However, this method was very dangerous. If he was not careful and encountered a malignant mutation, he could only benefit the future generations. However, a simple failure of the promotion itself was not fatal. The malignant mutation during the promotion was fatal. The chances of the two were independent. Most beyond grade, as were people with great luck, and Wernos was one of the best. With his deep accumulation and good luck, he did not encounter a malignant mutation this time, and was not killed by his own actions. This time, another upper echelon could not help but say angrily, Black Star knew that there was something fishy about this and deliberately hid it. He might have been waiting to see you fail your promotion and use this to trick us. He might have tried to indirectly kill an important member of the 3 universal civilizations so that we won't be able to threaten him. Wernos shook his head. It's not his fault. I was too anxious. This time, it was quite dangerous, and he was still a little afraid. He could not help but think of Black Star's brief advice after his promotion. Unfortunately, he did not take it to heart. He knew that he could not blame anyone else. For Wernos to be able to reach where he was today, he still had this bit of courage. He would not vent his anger on Han Xiao. On the other side, the ethereal pope was silent for a while before sighing. In that case, we still can't break through to the transcendent grade. For the time being, only Black Star has such power in the universe. This isn't a good thing. Should we ask Black Star about the way to advance to the transcendent grade? Forget it. Put yourself in his shoes. He either doesn't say anything or lies. If we go over to get information, not only will we lose some benefits to him, we'll also be played by him again. Wernos waved his hand. That's true. Forget it. As long as you're alive. We'll take our time in the future. The ethereal pope had a helpless expression. He had high hopes for Wernos, but now that his hopes had been dashed, he was naturally disappointed. However, it was not suitable for him to show it in front of Wernos, who had escaped death. This way, they would be back on the same starting line as the other two universal civilizations, and their intelligence advantage would be gone. Sigh. The ethereal pope sighed and did not say anything else. He only instructed Wernos to rest well before deactivating the remote projection. He had originally wanted to celebrate the birth of the transcendent grade direct descendant of ethereal, but since it had ended in failure, he had no interest in staying here. He still had to go back and take care of his wife. The guard fleet dispersed, and the 4 direct descendants also left. This area was free from military martial law and returned to peace. Wernos returned to the temple of 10,000 gods alone to lick his wounds. He recalled the process of Han Zhao's advancement over and over again in his mind. He muttered to himself, "What exactly am I missing?" A few days later, in the 3 Universal Civilizations leader's office. The details are like this. I'm prepared to invite the representatives of the various civilizations, including the 3 Universal Civilizations, as well as the various famous organizations, to hold a meeting on the security of the Galactic Society. The specific purpose is to discuss the prohibition of human trade. In the room, Han Zhao's remote projection spoke. He had taken the time today to come and talk to the leaders of the 3 Universal Civilizations, preparing to complete the end of darkness. The attitude of the 3 Universal Civilizations was very important. That's a good thing. We agree in principle. Lewis nodded. However, the external enemy hasn't been dealt with yet. Isn't it too early to worry about this problem? It'll be too late when the war is over. There's no harm in regulating the security before the war. Anyway, many troops are on standby now. It's good to pull them out to do something, Han Xiao said casually. Lewis pondered for a few seconds and turned to look at the other two. What do you think? I have no objections. Me too. Bruce and the Void Spirit Society's capital nodded and exchanged glances. They were rather curious as to why Black Star wanted to do such an unimportant thing at this time. After analyzing it, they all felt that this was most likely Black Star's act of wanting to earn public praise. If he succeeded, his reputation would definitely increase greatly. It was not that the 3 of them could not accept it. At the very least, Black Star had this request, which meant that he was quite confident in this war. Furthermore, with many factors, it was not easy for them to stop Black Star from increasing his reputation. In that case, I'll send a unified invitation to all the major organizations in the name of the Association and the 3 Universal Civilizations. Han Xiao nodded. This matter required the cooperation of many organizations. He was prepared to hold a meeting and invite the organizations of all the star fields in the universe to participate. After completing the goal of this trip, Han Xiaoxin was much happier. He turned to look at the ethereal pope and suddenly thought of something. By the way, has Wernos tried to advance? The corner of the ethereal pope's eyes twitched. Why do you care about this? From the looks of it, you should have tried. Han Xiao raised his brows and said playfully, he failed, right? Is he still there? The ethereal pope's mood immediately turned sour. He felt that this was a mockery and did not want to speak. Looks like he's not dead. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so quiet. However, I've advised Wernos not to be in a hurry to advance. It's his problem that he didn't listen, not mine. Han Xiao did not mind and said with a teasing tone, he's still alive. He just took the initiative to stop his promotion and suffered some backlash. He'll be fine after recovering for a while. The ethereal Pope's face darkened. There was no need to keep this a secret. With Han Zhao's intelligence network, it would not take long for him to find out about this. Wernos might even tell him himself. Seeing this, Han Zhao's eyes flashed. If Wernos had undergone an ordinary promotion, he would not have the qualifications to break through to the transcendent grade for a long time. However, if he had only failed his promotion and did not die, there was still a chance. In fact, whether it was the former or the latter, he did not care. If it was the former, Wernos would no longer be able to threaten him. If it was the latter, it meant that Wernos still had a chance to become a transcendence vestige. In any case, he would not lose out and monopolize the promotion method. However, he actually took the initiative to stop his promotion. That's quite bold. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and nodded. It seemed like such a small scheme would not cause Wernos to fail so easily. No matter what, he was a big shot who had stood at the peak of individual strength for so many years. He still had some skills. He did not have any enmity with Wernos to begin with, and he had no intention of targeting him. However, he did not persuade the other party to temporarily give up on his promotion, so he did not care about this outcome. However, seeing that this guy was at a disadvantage because of imitating him, Han Xiao was somewhat gloating. If you want to learn from me, you'll suffer. Chapter 1420. The Arcane Church did not deliberately block the news. The news of Wernos' failure to advance quickly spread among the upper echelons. The Radiant Federation, the Red Empire, and many beyond grade as learned of this matter. Their reactions were different. Some were surprised, some were regretful, and many were gloating. Originally, after Black Star opened the Transcendent grade, many beyond grade as also had thoughts of advancing. However, with Wernos' example, many people temporarily suppressed their desires. Even Wernos, who was currently second, had failed. It was better to wait and see. Because of this, many beyond grade as also confirmed that Black Star was the only transcendent in the short term. For the time being, no one else had the ability to break through to this level, and their position was unshakable. This made them even more eager to learn about the advancement method that Black Star had not revealed. However, these things were only spread among the upper echelons. The masses of the Galactic Society knew nothing about it and were still living a tight wartime life. However, a few days later, a piece of news from the Black Star Corps quickly spread throughout the Galactic Society, causing an uproar on the internet and attracting the attention of countless galactic residents. Black Star, who had been keeping a low profile for a period of time, suddenly made a big move. In the name of the Beyond Grade A Association and the 3 Universal Civilizations, he publicly sent out invitations. His target was the various organizations in the entire universe. There were civilizations and civilian organizations. The number was shocking, covering almost all regions. Black Star expressed in the letter that he was prepared to hold a meeting and invite the representatives of the various organizations to discuss the development prospects of the explored universe and the disadvantages of the human trade. Now that Han Zhao's every move was being watched by the galactic residents and the various large organizations, this action immediately caused a heated discussion. Countless people were puzzled and guessed the deeper meaning of Black Star's actions. The enemy was approaching step by step, and the situation of the war was not optimistic. Many people did not understand why Black Star would emphasize the issue of human trade at this juncture. Wasn't the war the most important thing now? Even if one had to settle the internal affairs before dealing with foreign enemies, it did not seem to have much to do with the human trade. Furthermore, a meeting of this level almost included all the famous organizations in the universe. So it should be led by the 3 universal civilizations. Why was it Black Star this time? And the meeting location was even in the territory of the Black Star Corps? Many people could not help but think, does this mean that Black Star has the same authority as the 3 universal civilizations? Was Black Star's status already so high? Although they were doubtful, the various organizations still gave him face. The various civilizations responded publicly, expressing that they would accept the invitation to attend the conference. Countless private organizations also expressed through various channels that it was their honor to receive Black Star's invitation, treating it as an honor. All of a sudden, the Galactic Society, which had been quiet for a long time, was in turmoil. It was as if Black Star was the leader of the Galactic Alliance, and his reputation was unparalleled. With Han Zhao's current status, not many organizations that wanted to survive in the Galactic Society dared to not give him face. The power of the face fruit was already at its peak. Under the watchful eyes of the public, time passed day by day, and the day of the meeting arrived as scheduled. Outside the Black Star Palace, a large venue that had been hastily built was suspended between the fortresses like a flat top. Its silver-gray shell reflected the light of the stars. Streams of light gathered from all directions, forming light dragons. Spaceships with the emblems of different organizations sailed into the spaceport one after another, and representatives of different appearances and costumes walked down one after another. The dot platform was already packed with people. Countless reception robots were shuttling through the crowd, leading the way for the representatives of different organizations. Some organizations that were too far away used remote projections, but there were also many organizations that sent people there personally to give Black Star face. So many people have come. The Amethyst Civilization's diplomatic group walked down from the spaceship. Ralph, who was in the lead, looked at the crowded scene in front of him, and a smile appeared on his wrinkled face. This time, a young diplomat beside him came up to him curiously and whispered, "Old leader, you've been through a lot. I heard that you used to have a good relationship with Black Star. It's all right, but I haven't seen him in a long time. After so many years, he's doing really well. He's no longer on the same level as me." A complicated look flashed across Ralph's eyes. He waved his hands and sighed. Back during the secret war of the Crimson Tide, the Black Star Corps had accepted the invitation of the Amethyst Civilization as one of the mercenaries to fight against the invasion of the Clint Kingdom and Bloodshed Land together. At that time, he had been the commander of Section 0 of the Secret Service and had been in charge of liaising with Black Star. They had known each other for many years. Because of this relationship, Purple Crystal had allowed Ralph to lead the team to participate in this meeting. However, decades had passed, and he was now old and about to retire. The power in his hands was about to end, but Black Star, who had worked with him back then, had become more and more active. He had gone from a small mercenary to an existence that the Amethyst Civilization could not afford to associate with. The two different lives made him have mixed feelings. This time, a discordant voice suddenly sounded from the side. "Isn't this the representative of the Amethyst Civilization? I didn't expect to meet you here." The Amethyst Civilization's delegation turned around and saw a group of people getting off the spaceship. It was the Clint Kingdom's delegation. The two parties were still not on good terms after the end of the Secret War, and there were many grudges between them. Now that the delegations from both parties met, they looked at each other coldly as if they did not like each other. "Humph, so it's the Clint emissary." Ralph glanced at him and said calmly, "It's been decades, and you guys are still the same. You hate Black Star, but you don't dare to reject his invitation. I advise you to keep a low profile and be a good kid in Black Star's territory. Don't cause trouble." The Clint emissary's veins bulged. He was about to retort when he saw the Black Star Corps' reception robot flying over. He quickly shut his mouth and only dared to glare at Ralph. Ralph had been in a high position for many years and had interacted with Clint countless times. He did not take a young emissary seriously at all. He turned around and looked at the different delegations. Compared to the civilization's delegations, the number of delegations from the private organizations was thousands of times greater. Most of them were representatives from the private organizations. Many of them looked very cautious. Clearly, it was their first time participating in an event of this scale, so they pretended to be calm and did not want to show their fear. One invitation, and almost all the organizations in the universe are here. Black Star's position is really unparalleled. What does it mean to command the universe? This is what it means to command the universe. Ralph sighed and followed the reception robot into the venue with his subordinates. At this moment, The venue was already filled with countless representatives. They were whispering to each other and had all kinds of strange appearances. It was like an intergalactic species expo. The media was not absent either. They were adjusting their equipment and preparing to broadcast the event. The beyond grade, as who were rarely seen, were all sitting in rows at the front, receiving the attention of the delegations. The emissaries of the various advanced civilizations and important private organizations were also waiting in the core area. Almost all the organizations with a name had arrived. It was an unprecedented occasion. After waiting for a while, all the representatives of the organizations were seated. There were no empty seats, and no one had yet to arrive. Only then did the door of the venue slowly close. The venue slowly quieted down. Soon, it was completely silent. This time, a figure walked out of the shadows on the stage and quickly appeared in front of everyone, attracting everyone's attention. Han Xiao came to the podium, glanced at the seats that were almost endless, smiled, and slowly said, "Thank you for accepting my invitation. On behalf of the Beyond Grade A Association and the 3 Universal Civilizations, I welcome your arrival. This meeting is held during this special period mainly to discuss the development prospects of the Galactic Society." Clap, clap, clap. Everyone clapped and pricked up their ears, curious about Black Star's intentions. Han Xiao raised his hand, stopped smiling, and solemnly said, "Since the beginning of the Galactic Society has been developing. Since the development of the Galactic Era, our civilization has created countless brilliant results in various fields. The Galactic Society is extremely prosperous, but at the same time, it has accumulated countless drawbacks. The human trade is a problem that has existed throughout history. The obedience of others is one of the core cornerstones of power, so enslaving others is an eternal desire. Demand brings a market, and no matter how we attack it, the human trade can never be eliminated. After failing again and again, we got used to it, tolerated it, and finally convinced ourselves that this is an unsolvable problem, giving up the idea of completely solving it. However, now that the situation in the galaxy has changed, our control over the various star fields is highly condensed. This is an opportunity to clean up the roots, so I hope to get your help to solve the drawbacks of the human trade together." Hearing this, the representatives were a little stunned and looked at each other. They had thought that Black Star had other plans for holding the meeting, and the human trade was just a reason. They did not expect Black Star to really want to solve this problem. Everyone was confused. It seemed like the existence of the human trade did not affect Black Star at all, right? Was there a need to use his reputation to call all of them over just for this matter? What was Black Star planning? What benefits did this kind of thankless thing have for him? If it was just to increase his reputation, there were plenty of ways. Why did he choose this troublesome path? On the stage, Han Xiao took in everyone's puzzled expressions. He let out a sigh and said solemnly, he exhaled deeply and said, "I know that you might think that the interstellar human trade has nothing to do with me and are wondering what benefits I can gain from it. To be honest, with my status, the existence of the human trade has no right to affect my interests. It's dispensable, but why did I hold a meeting for this matter?" Everyone, although the progress of the era mainly comes from the push of a few people, the main body of the world is still the most ordinary galactic residents. Because of their existence, our universe is so prosperous, and we have the name of civilization. Over the years, the human trade has caused countless tragedies. Although it does not threaten us, we should not turn a blind eye to it. We're used to standing at the top, but no matter how high we stand, we have to lower our heads at the right time to look at the dark corners and the situation of ordinary people. The meaning of our existence is not only for ourselves, but also for the mission of promoting the development of the world. We have the ability to make the Galactic Society better and create a better world. As soon as he said that, many people present trembled. They did not expect Black Star to say such a thing. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They felt that Han Xiao on the stage seemed to be emitting the light of humanity. Some people were excited, some were impressed, some scoffed, and some were suspicious. Was Black Star serious? Was a noble sentiment of boundless love or a show to leave a mark in history? After a moment of silence, an emissary of the supercluster civilization suddenly asked, "The war situation is still very tense. Right now, the war situation is still very grim. Isn't it too early to mention this matter? If we can't chase away the enemy, everything will be in vain." Han Xiao only glanced at him indifferently and said calmly, "It's precisely because we are confident that we can win this war that we don't want to let go of this opportunity to eliminate the drawbacks. Everything is for the future." As soon as he said that, everyone was energized. Black Star's tone was very calm, but it was like a reassuring pill that excited most of the people present. Now, all the organizations in the universe were worried about where the war would end. At this moment, a big shot like Black Star had come out to express his stance. Whether it was the truth or comfort, it was a boost to morale, especially when they thought of Black Star's goal this time. They felt a strong sense of confidence. If not for hope for the future, why would he spend so much effort to cure the long-standing drawbacks of the Galactic Society? Wasn't this all for the sake of ruling after winning the war? All sorts of thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. Suddenly, a representative of a private organization stood up and said loudly, "Your Excellency Black Star, you care about the common people. We admire your character and are willing to serve you." All of a sudden, the representatives of the various organizations seemed to have woken up from a dream and expressed their stance enthusiastically. The venue instantly became lively, and buzzing sounds could be heard. Although Black Star's words were pleasant to hear, it was unrealistic to want to convince those with vested interests with just a few words. Many organizations finally agreed to cooperate because of Black Star. The main reason for this was that Black Star had used his reputation to gather everyone and opened up the communication barrier between them. Coupled with his sufficient appeal, the matter was settled. If not for Black Star taking the lead and someone else saying this, they would not have taken action even if they were moved. Anyone could speak the truth. It did not matter if it was nice or not. What mattered was who said it. Many organizations were willing to help Han Xiao achieve this goal. On the one hand, it was politically correct. On the other hand, it was a grand event. There was no need to let go of this opportunity to increase their reputation. Lastly, it might be mixed with some respect for Han Xiao. This scene was also broadcasted by countless media outlets and landed in the eyes of countless galactic residents. "Oh my God, what is Black Star doing?" Countless galactic residents were dumbfounded. Black Star's statement completely exceeded the expectations of countless people. They did not expect Black Star to have such a far-reaching goal. They did not know the twists and turns behind the scenes. All they saw was the surface. Seeing that Black Star was able to pull so many organizations to work together to stop the human trade, his influence was comparable to the three universal civilizations. In the eyes of the galactic residents, Han Zhao's image instantly became even greater. Radiance radiated from his body, completely solidifying his position as the #1 person in the explored universe, creating a better galactic society. Black Star actually has such a spirit. Well said. This world should become more beautiful. While countless people were shocked, they could not help but feel touched. They did not expect someone like Black Star to still care about ordinary people like them. Human trafficking was like a deep nightmare, enough to wake any ordinary person up in the middle of the night with cold sweat. There were millions of races in the galaxy, and outsiders would always arouse curiosity. No one could guarantee that they would never become prey in the eyes of others. In their eyes, regardless of whether Black Star's motives were pure or not, as long as he stood up and did something, he was worthy of being respected from the bottom of his heart. If not for Black Star standing up for him, this would not have happened. The news was broadcasted again and again, leaving a deep impression in the hearts of more and more galactic residents. Han Zhao's reputation was also brought to an unprecedented height. The existence of a person like Black Star might really make the world a better place. One galactic resident after another could not help but have such thoughts. Some even felt that it was not bad to let Black Star rule the galactic society. Chapter 1421. Somewhere in the sea of star spirits, a large starship was slowly sailing in the universe. In the beautifully decorated captain's cabin, Carloso was lazily leaning against the soft and comfortable captain's chair. His legs were crossed on the table, and one of his arms was hanging diagonally on the armrest. He was holding a bottle of expensive fine wine and was swaying it due to inertia. A thick cigar was in his mouth, burning with green smoke. A virtual screen was floating in front of him, playing an entertainment program. Carloso had rough brown skin that looked like a lizard skin. His facial features were similar to a human's, but the distance between his eyes was rather large. His chin was protruding, similar to a beastman's. In addition, one of his eyes was blind. The dark hole was exposed just like that. It looked like a scar left behind by an energy gun, adding a fierce aura to it. He looked very rough on the outside, but he was wearing an exquisite and complicated aristocratic suit. It seemed to have been carefully ironed and did not have many wrinkles. He wore a small aristocratic round hat on his head, covering his sparse and messy yellow hair. Only a few strands of hair hung down from the gap of the hat. The contrast was strong. Most of the population trade was affiliated with the galactic black market, but it also had an independent ecology, forming a secret trade chain. As this line of work was not suitable to be exposed, any large-scale population seller rarely acted in the name of an organization. Usually, they would give themselves a code name and make friends with customers in their own names, forming a trade network with their identities in the underworld as a link. Carloso was a big seller with a good reputation in the population black market. His nickname was Lord. He had been in the business for many years and had excellent results. His business even spanned several star clusters. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a population trading giant in the sea of star spirits. Gulp. Carloso took a sip of wine. Bright red wine flowed from his lips and slid down his chin. He ignored the sounds of his subordinates playing in the cabin outside. As he puffed, he increased the volume of the virtual screen and kept changing channels with his hand gestures. He scanned through one program after another in boredom. At this moment, an encrypted communication interface suddenly popped up on the virtual screen. A number labeled Buyer 178 had called. Carloso's eyes flashed. He paused the program and answered the call. A black shadow without a specific appearance appeared on the screen and reported a string of coded numbers. Carloso also replied with a string of numbers. After a few words, they confirmed that there was no problem with each other's identities. After matching the secret signal, buyer number 178 went straight to the point. My lord, did you get the goods I ordered last time? Carloso took out a notebook and flipped through it. Sorry, we haven't gotten the goods yet. How long has it been? It's just a bunch of silvers. You weren't this slow before. My master is getting impatient. Buyer number 178 sounded dissatisfied. Carloso shook his head. The environment is different now. Because of that war, the entire universe has been under martial law for the past 2 to 3 years. A lot of races have gathered in the central galaxy to take refuge. Our business has dropped by 90%. It's not as easy to get goods as before. All along, the black market hidden in the depths of the galactic society had been very prosperous. However, with the outbreak of the World Tree War, this industry fell into a cold winter. Generally speaking, war should be able to promote human trade, but the war had not broken out in their territory yet. In order to prepare for war, the 3 universal civilizations had imposed high pressure on the various star fields. A large number of people had gathered to take refuge, and the mobility of the galactic residents had plummeted. This was equivalent to cutting off the supply of many human traffickers. Most of the people captured by human traffickers were ordinary galactic residents. They were usually lone galactic travelers, abducted tourists, or directly bought captives from galactic pirates. They rarely attacked passing spaceships, and it was even more impossible for them to land on a civilization's colonial planet to capture people. They did not have such armed forces. Due to the 3 universal civilizations' control, Carloso had not opened his stock for a long time. This business was getting more and more difficult. Although I can't get the silvers here, I still have some other goods. Do you want to take a look at the list? Carloso asked. Forget it, forget it. I'll find someone else. Buyer number 178 went offline. Carloso curled his lips and did not mind. This deal had fallen through, but he did not feel regretful at all. Because of the war, Carloso had already made up his mind to stop buying. He only wanted to clear his inventory and wash his hands of this business. As for whether or not he could leave safely, Carloso was not worried. People who had been in business for a long time all had a set of survival rules. They paid attention to keeping their identities secret, and most of the time, they only dealt with regular customers. They also maintained good relations with some armed groups, and some powerful customers would even provide them with convenience. Therefore, they were able to survive in the underworld. As long as they kept a low profile, did not expose themselves, and did not provoke important people, then no one would care about them. They could leave after making a profit, and it was actually very safe. Carloso turned off the communication interface and continued to change channels. He casually flipped through the programs, but his mind was not on them. He was immersed in the excitement of looking forward to the future. After this batch of inventory is cleared, I can retire. Carloso was in a good mood. The money he had earned over the years was enough for him to live a carefree life for a few lifetimes. As long as he successfully retired, he would be able to change his appearance and enjoy his life with the wealth he had accumulated. There were too many such examples in this industry. It could be said to be the dream of every human trafficker, and it was also Carloso's goal. Carloso could not help but feel excited at the thought of a beautiful life waving at him after working so hard for so many years. However, at this moment, he switched to a news channel that was broadcasting the meeting held by Black Star. Carloso had also paid attention to the invitation letter incident not long ago and could not help but stop. Soon, his eyes widened and his body trembled involuntarily. Intense fear gradually filled his face, and a chill penetrated his bones. Cold sweat dripped down his body. Looking at the countless large organizations on the screen, responding to Han Zhao's call, Carloso panicked. His mind went blank, and a sentence that he had once scoffed at appeared in his mind. You have to pay for what you did. Crackle. The subordinates who were shouting and playing cards in the cabin suddenly heard the sound of things being smashed frequently from the captain's room. Just by listening to the commotion, everyone could almost imagine how hysterical they were, like trapped beasts in despair. Endless Nebula, a certain galactic free city, a luxurious villa, was located in a scenic area with pleasant scenery. It was surrounded by lush forests and a clear lake. For such a special area to exist in a highly modified galactic city, it was obvious that the people who lived here were very powerful. In the spacious living room, a man in a nightgown was sitting on the sofa. A few female elven creatures were lying on the ground beside him. Their heads were lowered, and their chins were touching the ground. There were collars around their necks, and the leashes were tied to a pillar at the side like pets. In front of them was a huge virtual screen that was broadcasting a program. The man looked up at the screen as he ate his breakfast. From time to time, he would stroke the elven woman's arched back covered in purple bruises with his fingertips, as if he was simply stroking a pet. The elven woman subconsciously shrank back, but her eyes were like a pool of stagnant water without any fluctuations. She stared blankly at the virtual screen in front of her, like a walking corpse whose soul had been sucked out. At this moment, the man in the nightgown changed the channel and saw the news recording of Black Star's meeting. After watching for a while, he sneered with a disapproving expression. This Black Star, he's always so troublesome. If he's bored, he should go fight foreign enemies. That's his responsibility. What's the point of worrying about human trafficking? Does he really think he's the leader of the galactic society? What the hell? As soon as he said that, the elven women lying on the ground suddenly trembled, and their dead eyes suddenly regained some color. Ever since they were captured by human traffickers and sold as slaves, their lives were only left with deep darkness, like stagnant water without any hope. They thought that this was the end of their lives. However, at this moment, Black Star was like the dawn that pierced through the darkness, suddenly shooting into their despairing hearts, piercing their numb hearts, and awakening their broken personalities. The few of them looked up at Black Star on the screen in a daze, and they could not help but feel hope in their hearts. Will someone really come to save us? However, at this moment, the man in the nightgown noticed the gazes of his pets, and his brows furrowed. What's with that look? As he said that, the man in the nightgown glanced at Black Star on the screen again, and a burst of anger suddenly surged within him. He picked up a spiked short whip from the side and swung it. Looks like I haven't taught you enough. Are you still thinking of running away? Why, do you think that Black Star can save you after seeing the news? Continue. Keep an eye on him and see if he can save you now. The elven women were so scared that their bodies stiffened. They lay on the ground trembling, but they did not dare dodge or beg for mercy. Without the man's permission, if these pets opened their mouths to speak, it would only lead to worse torture. The man in the nightgown's expression was gloomy. He raised the whip and was about to strike. However, at this moment, the door of the mansion exploded. Boom! Debris flew everywhere, and dust covered the sky. The man in the nightgown was shocked. He hurriedly turned his head and saw a group of people walk in. They were wearing familiar uniforms. They were the security patrol team of this galactic city. Seeing who it was, the man in the nightgown immediately relaxed. Then, he was furious. What are you doing? Trespassing into my house. Do you want to die? The captain of the security team walked out and showed the electronic arrest warrant. He said coldly, Your Excellency Anne Huso, we have received a reliable report that you have violated the law by keeping galactic residents as pets. Please come with us. The man in the nightgown widened his eyes in disbelief. He pointed at himself in surprise. You want to arrest me because of such a small matter? Do you know who I am? You have violated the human trade prohibition of the galactic general law. The captain was expressionless. Can you bear the responsibility of arresting me? Go back and ask the lord of this free planet if he doesn't want his planet management rights anymore. The man in the nightgown only felt that it was ridiculous and did not know whether to laugh or cry. With his identity and background, this kind of crime was a joke. He had kept many galactic species as pets, and no one dared to hold him responsible for this kind of crime. He did not expect that such a low-level security officer would dare to challenge him. Such a small figure usually did not even have the right to talk to him. Please cooperate with our law enforcement. The captain frowned. What's your security officer number? Do you believe that I won't strip you of your clothes tomorrow? The man in the nightgown was so angry that he laughed. He walked forward, grabbed the captain's clothes, and lowered his head to look at the number on his nameplate. The captain pushed the man away and said in a deep voice, If you continue to resist arrest, we will use violent means. The man in the nightgown staggered from the push. He widened his eyes in disbelief, as if he did not expect this person to dare to attack him. His expression was extremely gloomy. He picked up the communicator from the table and dialed the number of the planet's city lord. He pointed at the security captain and said angrily, All right, just you wait. I'll see who can take me away today. Soon, the call was connected. Yo, isn't this Your Excellency Anne Huso? Why are you suddenly in the mood to look for me? The figure of the planet lord appeared on the screen with a polite smile on his face. The man in the nightgown immediately vented his anger on the planet overlord. He sneered and said, All right, your people have grown capable now. They dared to barge into my house and capture me. They even dared to attack me. If you don't give me a satisfactory answer today, your planet's management rights will be invalidated. Aya, why are you so angry? What's going on? The planet lord was surprised. Ask your people. The man in the nightgown stuffed the communicator to the security captain and took 2 steps back, looking like he was watching a good show. The security captain was not afraid. He picked up the communicator and reported the situation just now. He also showed the few female elves. After hearing this, the planet lord said indifferently, Oh, I see. So that's how it is. Captain of the security team, what's your name? Bell. The security captain replied calmly. Is the tip reliable? There's both evidence and witnesses. Hearing this, the planet lord nodded and slowly said, What are you waiting for? Then what are you waiting for? Capture this guy. If he resists arrest, don't bring him back. Just kill him on the spot. As soon as he finished speaking, the man in the nightgown was stunned. He thought he had heard wrongly. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't he order this group of security officers to retreat and then fire them to calm his anger? It had always been like this in the past. Why was it different today? What do you mean? The man in the nightgown was stunned. The planet lord shrugged. I should have expressed it very accurately. You violated the law, so you naturally have to be arrested. Are you crazy? The man in the nightgown widened his eyes. Have you forgotten who I am? I know you have a great background. The planet lord suddenly changed the topic and stopped pretending. His tone sank. But so what? It's His Excellency Black Star's will to not allow human trafficking. We're working for Black Star. Who do you think you are? You. The man in the nightgown was stunned and trembled. It was not fear, but uncontrollable anger. Ever since he was born, no one had dared to speak to him like this. However, before he could fly into a rage, Bell suddenly pulled out his gun and pulled the trigger without a word. Bang! A laser beam flashed, and the head of the man in the nightgown exploded. Charred flesh splattered all over the ground. The headless corpse seemed to be stunned on the spot. It swayed twice before falling to the ground with a bang. The nerves that were not dead were still causing the body to twitch slightly. Seeing this, the planet lord revealed an inexplicable smile. If not for his secret instructions, the security team would not have dared to act so boldly. This person has resisted arrest many times. Our team has received orders from the higher-ups to kill him on the spot. Bell put away his gun with a cold expression. He glanced at the headless corpse with disdain. Scum. It had been a few days since countless organizations expressed their stance at the meeting held by Black Star. The chain reaction caused by this meeting had already begun to appear. More than half of the resources of the Galactic Society had been stirred up by Han Shao. The organizations of the various star fields followed the consensus of the meeting and began to clean up the human trafficking in their territories. The Beyond Grade 8 Association controlled the galactic black market and directly started from the core, pulling out one human trafficking channel after another. It was not just the organizations that participated in the meeting. The other organizations that did not participate also joined in the grand event. They were not all taking care of Han Zhao's face, but seeing that so many large organizations had responded, some small organizations tried to use the opportunity of jointly cracking down on the human trafficking to form a connection with the local large organizations. The human trafficking elimination operation across the entire universe was in full swing. With the cooperation of a large number of organizations, batches of slaves were rescued, groups of human traffickers were killed, and buyers were captured one after another. There were also retired human traffickers who were tracked down by the intelligence department through the black market and hunted down again. It was rare to see so many organizations working together. It was like a highly efficient machine, and the efficiency every day made countless galactic residents marvel at Black Star's terrifying appeal. The relevant information naturally reached the ears of the many calamity grades in the training base. In the dormitory lounge of the training base, the virtual screen broadcasted the results of the crackdown on the human trafficking in various areas. Jadina stared at the screen with sparkles in her eyes. You actually have the same dream as me. Jadina clenched her fists tightly, and she could not suppress her excitement. As the daughter of Beast Ancestor, she hated the human trafficking to the core. Ending the human trafficking of the entire universe was a dream that she had hidden in the bottom of her heart, and she had never told anyone. However, she did not expect that Black Star would actually have the same idea as her. The difference was that to her, this was just an unreachable dream, but to Black Star, this was a goal that was within reach. Black Star, we are indeed destined partners. Jatina's breathing was heavy, and her heart was in turmoil. At this moment, she only wanted to give birth to a nest of monkeys for Black Star. For decades, her admiration for Han Shao had always been the same, and now it was even stronger. The rumors had always said that Black Star and the Dragon Emperor were a couple. But so what? I won't give up. So what if the Dragon Emperor is a beyond grade A? When I work hard to step into that level, I will be able to compete with you on equal terms." Jadana's eyes burned with an unparalleled fighting spirit, as dazzling as the eruption of a star. "Black Star, wait for me. The Dragon Emperor is not worthy of you. I will definitely snatch you from her hands." Chapter 1422. The entire explored universe's crackdown on the human trafficking trade was unprecedented, and the effect was obvious. Regardless of whether it was the underworld or the legal world, human traffickers no longer had a place to stay. The protection that they once relied on could not wait to avoid them. Both buyers and sellers were as silent as cicadas in winter. A large number of individuals and organizations that had been involved in the human trafficking trade were investigated. Depending on the severity of the case and the size of the organization, they were fined, imprisoned, or sentenced to death. Countless human traffickers ushered in their doomsday. Of course, most people would not wait for death. There were naturally rebels, and the complicated situation under the human trafficking ecosystem was exposed in front of the world. The sellers might have nowhere to run, but many buyers had power and influence and were scattered in various industries. They were like stubborn stains left in the cracks. Many organizations were willing to kill all the human traffickers, but it was impossible to clear out all the buyers. Many cooperating organizations would not agree either. After all, the implications were too wide, and it was easy for the nature of the operation to change. Their own dark histories might also be dug out. There were many considerations. Han Xiao did not force them. He only wanted to kill all the sellers. Even if there were still buyers who did not give up, they would not be able to find a source for a long time, so he could only think about it. If there were bold speculators who felt that the human trafficking market would be empty because of this, they would take the risk and try to develop private customers in a one-to-one confidential manner. The advanced civilizations that supervised the network were not just for show, and the search program created by a transcendent virtual mechanic like him was not to be trifled with. A more detailed handling method was jointly formulated by the Association and the advanced civilizations. Some new laws and regulations were introduced, and Han Xiao did not need to do it personally. As the human trafficking chains were publicly removed one after another, Han Xiao received more and more support from the galactic residents. However, although ending the human trafficking trade gave him a huge reputation, he also offended many people at the same time. Black Star Palace, private workshop. Han Xiao flipped through the feedback collected by the intelligence department over the past few days. With a strange expression, he clicked his tongue and said, "The scale of this incident is even bigger than I expected. The commotion is even bigger than I expected. This kind of thing really won't bring me many benefits. No matter how respectful they are on the surface, in private, most of them think that I'm meddling in other people's business. I wonder how many people secretly view me as an enemy." Buyers who had the ability to keep slaves and not be investigated were obviously not ordinary people. He had deprived them of their hobby. Even if these guys did not dare to express their dissatisfaction, they definitely did not have a good impression of him in their hearts. If there was a chance to hit him when he was down, they would definitely not mind stepping on him. "If it wasn't for my great strength, I wouldn't have had a good ending." Han Xiao curled his lips. Unfortunately, his fist was big enough. Even if these people didn't like him, they couldn't do anything to him. How could one not make enemies in the pugilistic world? Han Xiao did not mind. He opened the interface and looked at the mission list. The End of Darkness was already displayed as settable, which surprised him a little. It's done just like that? The operation isn't over yet. Han Xiao stroked his chin thoughtfully. Now that everyone was in a state of panic, no one dared to take the risk at this time. The human traffickers who had not been caught had no intention of doing business. They were all running away, and the trade chain was basically broken. In a sense, during this period, the interstellar human trade had indeed been temporarily ended. As long as he completed the mission before it came back to life, it should be fine. In that case, the mission judgment is still considered loose. The difficulty is within the acceptable range. Han Xiao heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. If the mission was to ensure that there was no human trade in the galaxy, he felt that the reward of 10 trillion or even 100 trillion EXP might not be worth this difficulty, let alone 1 trillion EXP. This request was also very difficult. It seemed easy for him to complete it, but that was because he had accumulated a high enough status. There were very few organizations in the entire galactic society that had his appeal. If it were anyone else, they would not have been able to do it. The End of Darkness has been completed. You have received 10,000 billion EXP, 15 random rewards, and 3 blank character summon cards. You have received the milestone Slave Liberator. Slave Liberator. Your relationship with all the Order factions will always be reverence. You have received 3 Universe Legendary Points. Universe Legendary Points. Light of Justice. You tore apart the darkness of the human trade and brought the light of justice to this galaxy. Countless people regard you as their idol. Universe Legendary Points. Great man's deeds. Your move to end the human trade will become a monument to humanitarianism. It will be remembered by history and left behind in the textbooks. Universe Legendary Points. Leader of Freedom. You save countless desperate people and remove their shackles. In the eyes of the saved, your existence symbolizes noble freedom. Had done, Han Xiao relaxed and checked his gains happily. The reward of 1 trillion EXP was mainly a reflection of the difficulty. To him, it was not much, but it was not much. It was only 6 or 7 times the size of an old man, but it was still a good windfall. The EXP was still useful to him. Although he had reached the transcendent grade, his total level still had not reached the upper limit. However, the leveling up cost was even more exaggerated. 1 trillion EXP could not even level up once. It was like a bottomless pit. In his eyes, the most practical reward was still the 15 random reward chances and 5 blank character summon cards. Especially the latter. He could touch people's abilities again. As for the effect of the Slave Liberator milestone, it would have been very useful in the past, but with his current status, even without this milestone, his performance was about the same. However, this achievement was a stronger protective talisman. He stood on the moral high ground. If the 3 universal civilizations wanted to target him in the future, the backlash would be even worse. In addition, this was also a huge political asset. If he had any thoughts about the position of the ruler of the Galactic Society one day, there might be some people who would welcome the great His Majesty Blackstar to his loyal central galaxy. Cough, cough. Han Xiao coughed dryly and put away these thoughts. He tapped the table with his fingers and pondered. He had used his influence to call for the organizations of the entire universe to work together to end the human trafficking. Naturally, he could not change his orders all the time. That would damage his prestige. Although the mission was completed, it was not appropriate to stop immediately. He still had to continue. That's good too. It's not a bad thing anyway. I'll help him all the way. Han Xiao calmed himself down and opened the forums to take a look. He found that many players were also discussing this matter. Most of the posts were filled with admiration and praise. This deed was also added into the Galaxy Chronicles by the players. They were not stingy with their praises. All kinds of flattery made him feel very comfortable and not ashamed at all. Browsing the forums happily, Han Zhao's eyes suddenly paused as he saw a post that he was quite concerned about. This was an announcement post. The content was about the time of the next version update. Han shouted some calculations. About 9 months later in the galaxy, the players would welcome an offline update. The activity time of the players in version 5.0 was far from the standards of the previous versions. Even the Pro League had not been held yet. However, this update was not a big version change, but a small update to enter version 5.5. There had been several small version updates in his previous life, but in Han Zhao's memory, version 5.0 in his previous life did not have this update. Looks like it's my butterfly effect again. Han Xiao was helpless. Under his influence, the storyline was completely different. Even the name of version 5.0 had become the Black Star Era. It was not strange that the update time had changed. After all, every version update was based on some major event. This was automatically determined. Now, the World Tree would only arrive at the explored universe in 10 years. He guessed that this was the reason for the small update. It doesn't feel like a beneficial change. I still want to see if I can level up a few more times. Han Xiao rubbed the space between his brows. Although a small version update could unlock the player's level cap again, it was also because of this that the players had an important way to spend their EXP. He could not continue to harvest leaks with the highest efficiency. In addition, the 3 universal civilizations were currently harassing the World Tree's army, and this was the time when they needed suicide squads the most. If the players went offline, they would lose an armed force that could be recycled. Looks like I have to make preparations. Before they go offline, I'll cut them hard. The light of the scythe flashed across Han Zhao's eyes. He was already very familiar with this. The main point was to give the players enough motivation to empty their shopping carts. Compared to selling resources and equipment, the knowledge and skills of various classes were the biggest way to harvest EXP. Therefore, the skills are slow to sell. Help us. 9 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, Han Xiao did his best to promote every day. It was as if it was double 11 every day. The army players fell into a carnival of chopping off their hands. Their EXP and wallets dried up at an unbelievable speed. However, they were not sad at all. Instead, they were very happy. They only felt that they had made a huge profit, and it was worth it. They smiled like flowers. After spending the money, they still have to thank us. After squeezing a wave of players, Han Zhao's EXP reserve was much more abundant. As long as he did not use it to level up, he could use it for a long time. In his opinion, it was enough to pay for many years of research. On the day of the version update, many players went offline and disappeared. This caught the 3 universal civilizations slightly off guard, but they quickly adjusted and changed people to stop the World Tree army. The loss rate inevitably increased. After solving the problem of human trafficking, Han Xiao did not continue to cause trouble. He cooperated with the 3 universal civilizations to prepare for war, and time flew by. During the preparation period, there were no more accidents. The modification of the flickering world border was successfully completed, and it became a war zone. The Secondary Dimension Expeditionary Army used the Realmless King's territory as a transit station and continued to search for the whereabouts of the World Tree's main body. Most of the Beyond grade had improved to varying degrees under Han Zhao's guidance, and a new batch of Beyond grade had been born from the Calamity grade students in the training base, leaving their names in the sanctum. In addition, many Beyond grade A organizations had also completed their migration. Under Han Zhao's instructions, the Black Star Corps moved away from the Flickering World and the Shattered Star Ring, temporarily withdrawing from these 2 frontiers to prevent additional losses in the war. Year after year passed, and the distance between the World Tree and the Flickering World shortened day by day. The atmosphere in the explored universe became tenser and tenser. Finally, on February 5th, 797 of the Galaxy calendar, the shadow of the World Tree spread. The Flickering World headed toward the border of the unexplored universe. Dense streams of light jumped over and turned into an enormous World Tree fleet. Countless World Tree soldiers looked at the galaxy outside the window. The scene they saw was transmitted through the World Tree's mind and was synchronized with the subduing Tree King's heart. The subduing Tree King sat on the throne with a cold glint in his eyes. More than 10 years had passed in the blink of an eye to him. The memory of fighting with Han Xiao was like yesterday. Field battles were not the strength of the World Tree civilization. Invading the territory of the enemy civilization was their greatest advantage. Through the World Tree's devouring ability, they could snowball and eat all the resources and exhaust all the enemies. The war is finally going to enter the rhythm we are good at. The subduing Tree King clenched his fist and crushed the armrest of the throne. His voice was low and hoarse. I've finally found your territory. It's time for you to taste despair. Chapter 1423. The enormous space fortress floated in the universe, surrounded by wormhole hyperdrive base stations. From time to time, The wormhole channels would open and close, and fleets would fly out. The Seabird Fortress was located in the Carter Star Cluster at the border of the flickering world. It was the strategic command headquarters of the Galactic Alliance Army in the flickering world. In order to fight against the World Tree Civilization, the three universal civilizations had established the Galactic Alliance Army during their preparations for war, unifying the forces of the explored universe. They had also divided the various star fields of the explored universe into numbered military regions and modified them to varying degrees. Over the past 10 years, the flickering world had been completely modified. The 5 border star clusters had hardened their defenses, leaving only countless defensive lines and strongholds that were armed to the teeth. Not only the first military region represented by the flickering world, even the star fields in the hinterland were prepared for war. After all, the situation of the World Tree invading their territory was different from the Interception War. During the Interception War, because there was a large area behind them, they had limited worries. Now that the flickering world was behind them, there was no way to retreat. They had to be on guard, and the pressure was completely different. At this moment, in the conference room on the top floor of the Seabird Fortress, countless people were gathered with solemn expressions. Not only were there the various commanders of the Galactic Alliance Army, but there were also some upper echelons of the Beyond Grade A Association. A strategic star map projection of the flickering world's border floated on the table. According to the Frontline report, the Vanguard Army of the World Tree is not far from the border of the flickering world. It is estimated that they will arrive at the outermost defense circle in 10 days. The various divisions are already prepared for battle. What do you all think? As Simon spoke, he operated the star map and enlarged the border area. He marked the locations in red, representing the areas that were most likely to be attacked by the World Tree's first wave of attacks. Although the World Tree only had one directional coordinate, it would not only take one route. It would split into a large number of vanguards and advance in different arcs, eventually invading the flickering world from different directions. However, the three universal civilizations had already expected this and had already built the flickering world into an iron bucket. Didn't we prepare for more than 10 years for this day? Let's just fight. That's right. We've already completed the preparations and discussions over the past 10 years. Next, it's time to test our results. The World Tree's current actions have not deviated from our preset situation. We just have to follow the strategy. When they really attack, we'll adjust according to the situation. Many officers spoke, filled with fighting spirit. Simon nodded and turned to look at Han Xiao. Your Excellency Blackstar, what do you think? Han Xiao rested his face on his palm and pondered for a moment. We have a strong defense, and the World Tree won't be able to snowball for the time being, so they won't be rash. They'll most likely build a bridgehead base at the border and stabilize the jump point, preparing to fight a protracted battle with us. Compared to more than 10 years ago, his appearance had not changed at all. With his lifespan as a transcendent, this amount of time could not leave any traces on him. That's right, Simon agreed. So, it's time to test our endurance. A war of attrition is inevitable. Let's see who can withstand it. Let's see if we'll be killed first, or if we'll find the World Tree's main body first. Han Xiao shrugged. Currently, the reincarnation mechanism of the World Tree was still unsolvable. Han Xiao felt that a transcendent should have the power to attack an information form, but he could not unlock it. He could only attribute it to the fact that some prerequisites had not been met. Over the years, the Expedition Army in the secondary dimensions had made some progress. Although they had not found the main body of the World Tree, they had figured out the range of the World Tree's influence in the secondary dimensions and had met the other party's garrison many times. Fortunately, with the protection of Harrison's halo, they did not expose their coordinates. However, their actions were finally noticed by the World Tree civilization. Currently, batches of blessed race were searching for the expeditionary army of the three universal civilizations in the secondary dimensions. However, this was inevitable. The main body of the World Tree was guarded by countless blessed race members. The closer the expeditionary army got to the main body, the easier it was to trigger the alarm. It was basically impossible to find the main body of the World Tree without alerting any guards. It was the same in his previous life. The team that spontaneously searched for the main body of the World Tree was chased all over the world by the blessed race of the World Tree. In the end, it was Harrison who was lucky enough to pass through the warning net. When is the Beyond Grade A Association planning to join the battle? Simon asked. They can join the battle at any time, but not me. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Before the World Tree sends out the Tree King again, I won't make a move. His advancement to the Transcendent Grade was still a secret to the World Tree. He wanted to use this opportunity to launch a surprise attack and seal another Tree King. If he rashly appeared to fight the small fries, the Tree King would most likely be so scared that he would not dare to show his face. Before luring out the Tree King, he did not want his cannon to kill mosquitoes. No one had any objections. After discussing for a while, the meeting quickly ended and they went offline to prepare. Han Xiao turned off the remote projection and looked back at the square of the training base. In front of him was a black mass of people. All the trainees were gathered there, looking at him eagerly. As you all know, the World Tree is about to invade. The training will end today. It's time for you to use what you've learned. Han Xiao scanned everyone as he spoke. After more than 10 years of high-pressure training, coupled with his own guidance, a new batch of Beyond Grade had been produced. The number was considerable, more than 40 of them. Other than the exploration era, there had never been a period in history where Beyond Grade were born so frequently. Nearly half of them were members of the Black Star Corps. Jiatain has successfully advanced. Niao Tian had also stepped into the Beyond Grade A realm half a year ago, and even Lagi had successfully advanced. Carrot had advanced to the Beyond Grade A realm a long time ago, but Han Xiao did not let him appear. He was still receiving special training and accumulating comprehension, trying to trigger the everlasting martial path again and quickly soar to his peak combat strength. The trainees were in an uproar for a while. Suddenly, as if they had agreed to it, they bowed to Han Xiao in unison. Regardless of whether they had advanced to the Beyond Grade A realm or not, regardless of whether they were army members or not, everyone had a solemn expression and said in unison, "Thank you, Your Excellency Black Star, for your 10 years of guidance. We will remember this kindness in our hearts." Regardless of what Black Star's motive was, at least they knew how many benefits they had obtained in the past 10 years. Their gratitude to Han Xiao came from the bottom of their hearts. Han Xiao accepted it calmly and waved his hand. "Go report to the army." Everyone bowed again and walked onto the spaceships that had long been prepared. They turned into streams of light and disappeared from everyone's sight. This time, Kasui walked up from behind and sighed. "I wonder how many of these Calamity Grade seeds will survive the next time we meet. We've given them a chance. They can't blame others for not being able to obtain the entrance ticket to the Sanctum in more than 10 years. Han Xiao shook his head. Kasui nodded. "It's time for us to report. Remember to find Aurora. We don't feel confident if we don't see her." "Got it." Han Xiao nodded and watched as the Beyond Grade A Association members left. In contrast, the Beyond Grade were not that nervous. With Black Star's Sanctum revival behind them, their lives were guaranteed. After more than 10 years of training, many Beyond Grade had made some progress. Han Xiao would spar with them from time to time and obtain some abilities from some of them. After sending everyone away, Han Xiao changed into the king and teleported to the Soul Terminal. As soon as he arrived, Hela, Aurora, and Fu Ding, who were in seclusion, noticed him. "You're here." Hela stopped absorbing the soul fragments, and an inexplicable aura rippled from her body. "You've improved a lot over the years." Han Xiao looked at her with a satisfied expression. The Soul Remnant Terminal was a great training ground for Hela and Phaidon. After more than 10 years of seclusion, Hela had successfully stepped into the peak Beyond Grade A realm, which could be considered a cheat-like speed in history. Her combat strength had greatly increased, and she firmly stepped into the top echelon. Fu Ding had used the Soul Swapper to absorb an unknown amount of soul energy, and he had also reached the level of a high stage Beyond Grade A Super. As for Aurora, she was unable to use the resources of the Soul Terminal, but after receiving Hela's special training, her ability had also increased. Although she was not as strong as Hela and Fu Ding, it was still quite good. You're here to bring us back, right? Counting the days, the World Tree should be here soon. Hela's eyes flashed with fighting spirit. I can finally meet the Tree King. Han Xiao ignored this battle maniac and turned to Aurora. You're our core member. Are you ready? Don't worry, I won't fail this time. Aurora clenched her fists with a determined expression. Although she still remembered that wet dream, she had already sworn that she would not fall for it again and cause huge casualties to her companions. Han Xiao smiled and rubbed her head. He then looked at Fu Ding and nodded. You're already a high stage beyond grade A. Using this power to activate the Soul Swapper is enough to deal a large amount of damage to the members of the World Tree. You have a lot of room to shine in this aspect. The Soul Swapper was a weapon of mass destruction, and its power was not inferior to psionic waves. It was also a military treasure. When it was not convenient for him to attack, Fu Ding could replace him and deal a large amount of damage to the crew of countless fleets. I understand. Fu Ding stroked the mirror of the Soul Swapper and nodded. Although he did not like killing, he would not show mercy to invaders like the World Tree. Han Xiao gave everyone a few instructions, changed into another set of king, and teleported to the underworld. He immediately saw Evans, an ES god, who was teaching him combat techniques. As soon as he saw Han Xiao, Evans immediately stopped practicing and walked over. Han Xiao did not exchange pleasantries and went straight to the point. The World Tree is here. Come with me. Okay. Evans' heart skipped a beat, and he nodded. ES God walked over with his hands behind his back. Hearing this, he said, Don't die on the battlefield. I'm still waiting for you to fulfill my dream. Although the Sanctum Revival is good, as long as you die once, your ability will be lost, and you will never be able to step into the Transcendent grade. Don't blame me for giving up on you then. Don't worry, teacher. I won't die so easily. Evans replied solemnly, his tone filled with confidence. As the saying went, having an old man at home was like having a treasure. ES God had roamed the universe for many years and was extremely experienced. Under his teachings, Evans had already accumulated a lot of combat techniques. When he had just advanced and obtained the energy control, Esper ability, Evans was at most an ordinary person with a gun. Now that he had received ES God's guidance, he was like a soldier king who had completed all the elite special forces courses. He was proficient in all weapons, and his combat ability had increased by countless times. After more than 10 years of interaction, Evans had already treated ES God as his teacher. Although ES God did not admit it, he did not reject this title either. Follow me. Han Xiao raised his brows and did not say anything else. He teleported away with Evans. ES God watched the two of them disappear with a faint smile on his face. The three universal civilizations prepared for battle. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the World Tree's vanguard finally arrived at the border of the flickering world. Just as the General Staff had expected, the World Tree invaded from different directions, but they were all within the range of the defense circle. Battles broke out in multiple areas at the same time. In all the battlefields, the individual strength of both sides was restrained. The Beyond Grade, as of the three universal civilizations, had only probed a few times, but the World Tree civilization had never sent out any Beyond Grade as to fight. With the example of Heart Tree King, the World Tree was extremely wary of Black Star. They did not send out any Beyond Grade as in the first wave of probing attacks. In the first clash after more than 10 years, the three universal civilizations, who had been preparing for a long time, successfully dealt a heavy blow to the World Tree army. They did not let the World Tree step into their territory, and the two sides were in a stalemate at the border of the flickering world. However, even though they had won a battle, the three universal civilizations were not happy at all. This was only the first wave of probing attacks, and the World Tree did not consume much of its troops. The situation was still grim. Just as Han Xiao had said, the World Tree was prepared for a protracted battle. The first thing it did was to build bridgeheads outside the border of the flickering world and station troops on a large scale. eyeing them covetously. Because the World Tree had advanced all the way and controlled all the jump points, the three universal civilizations were currently unable to replicate the space-time anchor orbit during the Interception War. They could not chase the enemy away and could only defend their territory and endure the impact of the World Tree. This was the situation of the war in the future, and it was also a situation that the three universal civilizations were already mentally prepared for. They used the strategic depth of the entire explored universe to exchange for time. Chapter 1424. The intense battle between the World Tree Army and the Galactic Alliance Army at the border lasted for 2 months, but the World Tree was still unable to completely enter the flickering world territory. Although it had broken through the Galactic Alliance Army's defense line several times and allowed the fleet to drill in, the defense circle that the three universal civilizations had built over the past decade was far more perfect than the temporary interception circle back then. The support network was extremely dense, like an extremely dense elastic net. The deeper they fell, the greater the rebound. They could not gain a foothold at all. All the World Tree troops that attacked the flickering world were either expelled or annihilated. The best record only lasted for less than 3 days, and they did not even pass through the border star system. The border battle reports of the flickering world were constantly sent back to the central galaxy and spread throughout the galactic society. Countless galactic residents had been in fear for more than 10 years. Now that the enemy had truly invaded their country, many people were even more afraid. However, because the Galactic Alliance Army had always blocked the enemy outside their territory, their outstanding performance gave most of the galactic residents more confidence. In the Sibert Fortress, many Beyond Grades had been on standby for 2 months. Didn't the World Tree like to use its individual strength to exchange with us in the past? Why is it so cowardly now? It's getting worse and worse. In the lounge, Sun Hunter stepped on the table, his tone full of disdain. They're probably afraid of Black Star. He caught a tree king more than 10 years ago, so it must have hurt them, Kant said with a smile. In the past 2 months, no matter how they provoked or tempted them, the World Tree never allowed them to send out their individual strength. They calmly watched the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations cause trouble on the battlefield. The Beyond Grade as rubbed their palms together helplessly. No matter how strong their fighting spirit was, there was nothing they could do if they did not take the bait. They had even used their bodies to tempt them, but the World Tree experts still did not come out. They were like cowards. You're thinking too much. The World Tree isn't that afraid of me. They should be observing the number of our individual strength. They won't give up on the exchange tactic so easily. They'll probably take action soon. Han Shao played with Ames's hair and replied casually. He had been accompanying everyone here on standby, waiting for the big fish to be caught. In the past few days, the three universal civilizations had concealed the true scale of their individual strength. Most of the dozens of new Beyond Grade did not go on stage, and Hela, Fu Ding, Evans, and the other experts with special abilities or huge improvements did not take action either. At the same time, the Beyond Grade, as who had sacrificed in the last battle of the Intercepting Circle, did not appear either, allowing them to continue to maintain their dead status in the eyes of the World Tree. In the Holy Covenant organization that others did not know about, there were still dozens of revivers who were ready to participate in the battle at any time. The individual strength displayed in front of the World Tree was only the tip of the iceberg. The purpose was to make the World Tree think that the exchange tactic was effective and fall into the trap. After more than 10 years of searching, Oathkeeper had accumulated several Sanctum keys. Han Shao had not used them all this time, treating them as strategic reserves. These were all capital to be used. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as everyone was chatting, the alarm suddenly rang, and the World Tree launched another attack on the outermost defense circle. Everyone paused. Before they could move, the remote projection of an officer suddenly appeared in the room and said with a deep voice, "Everyone, the Beyond Grade, as of the World Tree, have finally appeared." Please arrive at the battlefield as soon as possible. Hearing this, Han Zhao's eyes flashed. They're finally here. Is there a Tree King this time? Yes. Which one is here? 2. The Lord's avatars of the subduing Tree King and the fortitude Tree King. Kasuyi could not help but smile and interrupt. With the lesson from last time, the World Tree doesn't dare to let the Tree King come out alone. However, the configuration this time is similar to last time. I'm afraid they feel that as long as they are more careful, they won't fall for it like the Heart Tree King. This time, a new beyond grade A asked curiously, the Tree King has appeared. How is it? Is your Excellency Black Star going to fight? Just one subduing Tree King. Forget it. I'll leave him to you guys. Han Xiao stroked his chin, thought for a while, and clicked his tongue. He hoped to catch a big fish. At the very least, it would be a fortitude Tree King, preferably an ancestral Tree King. It was not worth it to expose his strength for a mere subduing Tree King. He just despised the subduing Tree King for being a pugilist. His function was too simple, and his importance was far inferior to the other Tree Kings. Furthermore, there were many experts in the Beyond Grade A Association now. He did not need to do anything to kill the subduing Tree King. As long as he killed this tool and made him unable to revive in the short term, he should be able to lure out the ancestral Tree King and the secret Tree King. That was the better prey in Han Zhao's eyes. Hela's eyes lit up as if she was afraid that someone would snatch her opponent away. She immediately said, "Then leave this guy to me." Han Xiao raised his brows and poured cold water on her mercilessly. Although your improvement is not small, you're still far from killing a Tree King. We'll know after we try. Hela's eyes flashed coldly. All right, as long as you don't let him escape. Han Xiao curled his lips. Originally, Wernos was the most stable person to deal with the Tree King, but this Astra Starred had not left the Temple of 10,000 Gods for more than 10 years, and still had no intention of participating in the battle. However, with the Underworld's big brother, there was no lack of strong men. At this moment, Han Xiao noticed that Evans's palm was trembling slightly. He could not help but feel strange. Are you afraid? This is my first time on the battlefield, and it's a galactic war of this scale. I'm indeed a little afraid. Evans was calm. Lagi, who was at the side, muttered softly, "What's the use of being afraid? Don't tell me I won't die in battle if I'm afraid. I didn't expect to die after becoming a Beyond Grade A for only a few years. Sigh. As expected, someone like me doesn't have a right to enjoy life. You better shut up," Han Xiao said in annoyance, interrupting this chatting genius. "If not for the fact that you're more or less a combatant, I would have locked you in amber today." At this moment, at the border, the enormous World Tree Fleet was attacking the defensive circle, and the fleets of the Galactic Alliance Army cooperated with the various strongholds to counterattack. Countless rays of terrifying power shuttled back and forth in the vast universe battlefield, forming a resplendent but fatal rain of light that shot into each other's formations, causing spaceships to explode into fireworks in space. This was not the first time the two sides had fought, and the battle quickly reached its climax. The troops moved under the command of the various military artificial intelligences. From a macroscopic perspective, it looked like a large-scale exchange of fire, but in fact, both sides were adjusting their tactics every moment. On the battlefield, a group of World Tree Beyond Grade, who were emitting astonishing energy, were observing the battlefield from afar under the protection of their own starships. The subduing Tree King had his hands behind his back as he scanned the formation of the Galactic Alliance Army with his sharp eyes. Not long after, the Beyond Grade, as of the three universal civilizations, also arrived at the battlefield one after another. The two sides faced each other from afar. Because only a portion of them appeared, they did not seem to have as many people as the World Tree experts. The group that appeared was mainly the Beyond Grade, as who had participated in the Interception Circle battle. The others were hiding in the dark. Seeing this, the subduing Tree King narrowed his eyes and nodded. Humph, many of them died last time. They're no match for us this time. In the past 2 months, he had been observing the situation of the beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations. Most of them were old opponents. Although there were some new faces, the number was limited. They were probably new beyond grade as. He was not surprised by this. The World Tree had also been nurturing supers for the past 10 years, and it had also given birth to some new holy tree emissaries and ancestral spirits. The scale of their individual strength had also increased. A portion of the enemy's individual strength had died in the battle more than 10 years ago, and the dead of the World Tree had all been revived. The subduing Tree King was quite confident. However, the Heart Tree King had already fallen. As a pugilist, it was very difficult for him to instantly kill the enemy's healer. The last time he tried, he fell in a Black Star's trap and was unfortunately killed. Therefore, the subduing Tree King did not intend to repeat the same mistake. This time, he had only gathered the World Tree experts to test the waters. Scanning the enemy, the subduing Tree King's eyes suddenly focused. He realized that there was no trace of Black Star. That guy didn't come out? No, he must be hiding and planning a sneak attack. The subduing Tree King became vigilant. The only thing he was worried about was Black Star. The Heart Tree King had been sealed, and he did not want to follow in his footsteps. He was secretly on guard, afraid that Han Shao would jump out and stab him. As the saying went, when enemies met, their eyes would turn red. The beyond grade, as on both sides, charged toward each other without saying a word and immediately started fighting on the battlefield, forming a large chaotic area. The subduing Tree King activated his liberation form without hesitation, and his entire body shone with a green light. He had wanted to force Black Star out, but he did not expect to be stopped by a red-haired woman. Your opponent is me. Hela stood in front of the subduing Tree King with a cold expression and a strong killing intent in her eyes. The subduing Tree King's eyes flickered. He had some impression of Hela. It's you? Your self-healing ability is not bad, but you want to stop me with your combat strength? Other than Black Star, the subduing Tree King was not afraid of anyone. Thinking of Hela's performance on the battlefield more than 10 years ago, he did not take her seriously. Hela did not have the habit of shooting her mouth off. Hearing this, she snorted coldly and erupted with a powerful aura. Bright red death energy whistled out. The subduing Tree King suddenly felt a threat, and his expression changed. He looked at Hela with surprise. She's actually become so strong? Without a doubt, this red-haired woman had already entered the peak beyond Grade A realm, and her energy fluctuations were at the upper tier of peak beyond grade as it had only been 10 years since they last met, but she had improved so much. The subduing Tree King's expression became solemn. Although there was still a gap between the two of them, he had to admit that this woman in front of him already had the qualifications to fight him. He sensed the battle situation of his other companions and realized that the improvement of the enemy beyond grade as was far higher than that of their World Tree experts. Although they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, they were not at a disadvantage. How do they train? The subduing Tree King was shocked. In just 10 years, they had improved so much. How could it be so easy for a beyond grade A to increase their combat strength? Could it be that the enemy's territory was filled with outstanding people, and all of them were geniuses? Chapter 1425. Without waiting for the subduing Tree King to do anything, Hela had already attacked. A red light flashed in her eyes, and clusters of death energy that had been brewing into an ocean shot out. They contained a destructive aura, sealing all of the subduing Tree King's dodging angles. The subduing Tree King suppressed the shock in his heart, and his entire body flashed with green light. His vigorous, pugilist flames were like a supernova erupting, emitting a thick circle of light green light. The approaching death energy froze in midair and shattered one after another. However, more death energy surged down, continuously filling the gap. After being strengthened by the power of the dead, the corrosion strength had increased by many times. Although the subduing Tree King's protective barrier had blocked the death energy, there was still a portion of the red air current left on it, continuously wearing down the thickness of the pugilist flames. The flames that were tainted by it quickly lost their vitality and turned into stars that dissipated into the universe. This ability has the offensive attributes of impact, corrosion, vitality weakening, mind, and so on. Furthermore, it seems to have some kind of superimposed killing technique. If my body is hit, it won't be good. With a thought, the subduing Tree King channeled more energy into his protective barrier. At the same time, he used his authority as a Tree King to summon the World Tree Roots. They quickly swirled as though they were forming a whirlwind, shattering the incoming death energy. He had not stopped moving. Immediately after, he bent his knees and stomped on the ground. A shockwave instantly exploded behind him, and his entire body shot out like a cannonball, turning into a stream of light that charged toward Hela, leaving behind afterimages. Come! Hela's eyes turned fierce, and a red to black energy suddenly surged out of her body. Then it quickly rolled back and covered her body layer by layer, instantly solidifying. The death energy seemed to have turned into some kind of gelatinous substance, and her entire body turned into a 5 to 6 meter tall red-black giant. At the same time, dense and complicated silver-gray patterns crawled all over the giant's body, looking rather mysterious. The outline of the giant's body was exactly the same as Hela's main body, but there were no facial features on its face, only a pair of burning white eye sockets. The next moment, the green meteor suddenly collided with the giant's abdomen and flew out with her. Like a ray of red and green, it smashed through dozens of starships, leaving behind a path filled with fireworks. Dong, 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 dong. The green fist shadows that filled the sky rapidly fell, bombarding the little giant's body like a torrential storm, making it hard for him to breathe. However, her reddish-black body was extremely tough. Only ripples appeared on the surface of her body, and there were no signs of it being shattered. Suddenly, the fist shadows disappeared. The little giant caught the subduing Tree King's fist with both hands and lowered his wrist. Bang! The powerful force created a flowing ripple on the surface of the little giant's body, passing from his palm to his back and then out of his body. A green energy shockwave spread out in the space behind him, shattering over 100 battleships that were engaged in battle. Martial artists are invincible in close combat? I don't believe it. A mental wave with a strong fighting spirit spread out, and the red-black giant suddenly smashed its head onto the subduing Tree King's head. The vibration was transmitted through the two of them, and with a loud clang, a friendly meeting took place between the two of them. Immediately after, the little giant let go of the subduing Tree King and clenched his fists. In the blink of an eye, countless red lights flashed, and hundreds of fists with red flames appeared on the subduing Tree King's protective shield. A huge driving force erupted and sent him flying. In this form, Hela had actually repelled the subduing Tree King once in close combat. Interesting. The subduing Tree King, who was sent flying, immediately stopped and rubbed his stuffy head. Other than that, he was unharmed. He was a little surprised by Hela's close combat skills. After the previous exchange, he realized that the toughness of this little giant's physique was frightening, and her strength was extremely strong. If not for the lack of pugilist flames, he would have thought that he was fighting with a peak beyond grade A pugilist. Again, Hela waved her hand, full of fighting spirit. Although her ability was good at mid-range and long-range attacks, she still preferred fierce melee combat the most. After challenging Black Star for so many years and being pressed to the ground time and time again, Hela was already enjoying being beaten up. Not only did she like to be beaten up, but she also liked to beat others up like how Black Star beat her up. Aurora had suffered many punches in the past 10 years. Because the power of the dead contained the inheritance of her previous owner, Nerkes, Hela did not need to develop her abilities to comprehend the usage of many Esper abilities. After stepping into the peak beyond Grade A realm, she had unlocked many new abilities. Transforming into a red-black giant was one of them, and it was a core ability. The death energy that Hela controlled was usually released externally. Now, she could condense and compress it in her body, transforming herself into another form called Death God's Liberation. This was one of Nerki's main battle methods. This ability had many transformation stages, and the further one progressed, the stronger it became. However, each stronger stage required a sufficient energy rank to be unlocked. The unlocking condition for the ultimate Death God required an energy rank of more than 90,000 Ona. Hela had yet to meet the requirement, and had only unlocked the Burial Spirit stage, which was the red-black giant she was currently transforming into. After entering the Death God's Liberation state, her body would fuse with the underworld dimension to a higher degree, and a new talent would be activated. The more hero spirits in the underworld and the higher the quality, the more buffs she would receive. The effect was similar to Proof of Leadership, and this was also one of the reasons why Hela's combat strength had soared. At the same time, because her body was highly condensed death energy, the characteristics of her ability still existed. Even if she used physical attacks, they would still have mental damage and corrosion. Furthermore, just by touching her body, the vitality of others would be drained. The two of them looked at each other in midair, and lightning flashed. The next moment, they moved at the same time, and the red and green figures collided again. Their fists landed on flesh, and the aftershock spread out, disrupting the battlefield. TSK, so scary. Han Shao stayed in the base to watch the battle. Looking at the intense battle on the screen, he could not help but grin. He had tried Hela's form before, and her close combat ability was indeed very strong. Coupled with her recovery ability, she was so tanky that it made one's hair stand on end. Her combat strength was firmly in the top tier. However, in his opinion, even with this move, Hela was still far from being able to defeat the Subduing Tree King. Before he advanced, even if he could defeat the Subduing Tree King one-on-one, he would not be able to do anything to him for a while. Hela's combat strength was far inferior to his before he advanced, so it was impossible for her to deal with the Subduing Tree King alone. However, with her disgusting tankiness, she would not be beaten into a meat patty by the Subduing Tree King for a while. Han Shao stopped looking at the two lumps of meat rubbing against each other and turned his gaze to the other battlefield. Fortitude Tree King and Herberlin were old opponents, and their eyes were exceptionally red when they met. They were fighting passionately, and the two huge bodies of the two mechanical deities rolled across the battlefield, crushing starships one after another. Other than the two of them, there were also many mechanical deities on the battlefield. Due to the size of their bodies, they were all the most eye-catching in the beyond Grade A battlefield. As for the old dragon, after successfully losing weight, he had already escaped the fate of being a target. At this moment, he was chasing after a World Tree Army leader and throwing spells at him. His improvement was huge, and it fully demonstrated the benefits of acknowledging an ancestor. As for Manison, Kasui, and the others, they had all found their opponents and were fighting nonstop. In addition, golden light would shoot out from time to time. That was Aurora's precise healing. Her control was much better than 10 years ago, and her success rate was also higher. It could be seen that the special training was quite effective. After a few rounds of Sanctum revivals, the number of first-tier experts on the three universal civilizations side had increased by quite a bit. However, the 10 executive officers of the World Tree, the high-level Holy Tree emissaries, the 13 ancestral spirits, and the army leaders were not to be trifled with either. However, not all the first-tier experts on both sides had entered the battlefield. The World Tree did not allow all the experts to participate in this probing attack, and the three universal civilizations had also hidden a group of revivers and new beyond grade as. Although the three universal civilizations were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, their strength had increased, so they did not suffer any losses and were in a stalemate for the time being. Fu Ding is about to make his move, right? Han Shao looked away and narrowed his eyes at Fu Ding, who was hiding in the fleet and waiting for orders. Although the souls of all the enemies were bound by the World Tree, causing the Soul Swapper to only be able to launch destructive attacks on them and not transfer their souls out, it was still very sharp. As expected, after Han Xiao watched for a while, Fu Ding finally took out the Soul Swapper, took a deep breath, and activated this universal treasure. The next moment, the souls of the crew members in the surrounding World Tree starships were instantly torn into pieces, and they died on the spot. Not a single person was left alive on the ship. The World Tree battleships that had encountered this situation numbered in the tens of thousands, and they were still spreading into the distance. What's going on? The subduing Tree King's expression changed as he sensed this abnormality. The strange thing about the Soul Swapper was that it did not leave any traces. In the eyes of the subduing Tree King, a large number of World Tree crew members had died without any warning. He could not find the source of the attack, but it was definitely the enemy's doing. Although he did not know what special weapon the enemy had used, it was obviously not a coincidence that the dead were gathered in one area. The World Tree fleet immediately began to adjust and avoid this area. Although this was a stupid method, it was indeed effective. The Soul Swapper did not have an infinite range. Although it could cover a planet in the scale of the galactic battlefield, such a range was relatively small. Of course, Fu Ding was not a fixed cannon. As long as he moved around the battlefield, he could kill more enemies. The subduing Tree King naturally did not know about this. He observed the sudden deaths of the soldiers and then looked at the current situation of the Beyond Great as. His mood was solemn. This test is about done. It's time to retreat. Although the most troublesome Black Star had yet to appear, the subduing Tree King already had the intention to retreat. He had thought that this probing attack would give him the upper hand in terms of individual strength, but he did not expect the situation to be bad. This civilization that was viewed as prey was very tenacious. It seemed like even if they reached the other party's territory, they would not be able to defeat the other party easily. This time, it was not the main attack. If the situation was good, the subduing Tree King would not mind switching. However, the situation was not as expected, and he felt that there was no need to continue fighting. The subduing Tree King's eyes focused, and his energy erupted. His fist glowed with a green cross-shaped light, and he punched Hela's abdomen at lightning speed. Bang! The impact halo bloomed. The two of them were originally locked in a fierce battle, but this heavy punch suddenly broke the stalemate. Hela was blasted away, and at the same time, the World Tree root beside the subduing Tree King swung out, sending Hela flying even further, smashing a row of starships like a meteor. The subduing Tree King did not chase after her. Instead, he turned around and retreated. The other World Tree experts received the order and retreated at the same time, leaving only the Lord's avatars of the Fortitude Tree King and the other mechanics to cover their retreat. Although he could not kill Hela in a short time, the difference in strength was not so easy to make up for. If he wanted to leave, Hela would not be able to stop him. Chase! Kasuyi shouted in the mental network, and everyone who was fighting chased after him. Hela finally managed to stop herself. When she looked up, she realized that the subduing Tree King was already far away. She immediately chased after him, but the distance between them was still increasing. She could not help but release a mental wave and shout, "Don't run. Continue fighting with me." The subduing Tree King turned a deaf ear to her and did not want to pay attention to her at all. He quickly shuttled through the area where the two fleets were fighting, getting closer and closer to his own formation, leaving her with a back view that was getting further and further away. At this moment, Dylan, who had already materialized, suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Looking at the subduing Tree King's figure from afar, he let out a disdainful sneer. "No way, you call yourself a king? You're just a piece of trash who fled. You're not even worthy of being the most useless pugilist." As soon as he finished speaking, the subduing Tree King suddenly stopped running, and a look of shock appeared on his face. "What's going on? It's just a single sentence of ridicule." With my temperament, I actually stopped for some reason and couldn't help but want to turn around and beat this guy to death. Could this be some kind of mind control similar to the spirit of words? Chapter 1426. What are you doing? The Fortitude Tree King, who was wrestling with Herberlin, immediately noticed the abnormality of the subduing Tree King and was shocked. What the hell? Are you serious when you stopped? Originally, the many world tree experts had retreated at the same time and formed a battle line to support each other. They could efficiently resist the pursuit of the enemy. However, the moment the subduing Tree King stopped, he instantly fell to the back and left the team, exposing himself to the pursuit of the enemy beyond grade as. The subduing Tree King's body trembled as if he had just woken up from a dream. He suppressed the urge to turn around and looked at Dylan deeply before hurriedly catching up with the rest. However, before he could speed up, Dylan raised his brows. What are you looking at? Why? Do you want to turn around and hit me? Do you have a guts? The subduing Tree King paused, gritted his teeth, ignored him, and continued to speed up. Seeing this, Dylan sneered and said in a judgmental tone, "That's right. Continue running. A pugilist who doesn't even have the guts doesn't even have a right to look at me." The subduing Tree King stopped subconsciously once again, his heart filled with shock and anger. Usually, he would not be affected by this kind of verbal conflict, but for some reason, when these words came out of this person's mouth, he could not control his emotions. Anger rushed to his brain, and the subduing Tree King suppressed it. Just as he was about to start again, Dylan's strange voice sounded again. You really stopped? You can't take it anymore? You don't even have this bit of patience. As expected of a pugilist. Other than stupid, there's no other adjective suitable for you. As if an invisible hand had grabbed his body, the subduing Tree King froze. He wanted to continue retreating, but he could not move his legs. A demonic murmur echoed in his heart. Beat him to death. Beat him to death. Beat him to death. The subduing Tree King's expression changed drastically. His expression was distorted, as if he was fighting with the heavens. Suddenly, the Fortitude Tree King's roar sounded in his heart. Are you King retreating or not? The Fortitude Tree King could not take it anymore. He did not know what possessed the subduing Tree King, but he was running intermittently. It was as if he had kidney deficiency and he was getting more and more out of the team. That guy is strange. His words can provoke my anger. The subduing Tree King's tone was gloomy. Can't you block his mental message? Fortitude Tree King roared angrily. He even needed him to remind him of such a simple thing. As expected of a martial artist, the subduing Tree King was stunned for a moment before understanding. Yes, I can still block him. Why didn't I react earlier? He must have been affected by his anger and lost his mind. The subduing Tree King tried to convince himself, but he was unwilling to admit that although he wanted to hit someone, Dylan's words seemed to have a magical power that made him want to listen to them more. He quickly solidified his mental barrier and blocked the external mental fluctuations. At this moment, the subduing Tree King felt that the world had become peaceful. Suppressing the inexplicable reluctance in his heart, he hurriedly continued running. Go back and support the subduing Tree King. The Fortitude Tree King took over the command and ordered the world tree experts to turn back and provide reinforcements. The battlefield changed rapidly. Although the subduing Tree King was only delayed for a short while, he was already a long distance away from the retreating army. He was completely alone. Originally, many world tree experts had already run far away and could shake off the beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations with minimal casualties. However, because the subduing Tree King was held back by the taunts, they had no choice but to turn back to support him. They fell into the mud again, and the retreat formation was messed up by the subduing Tree King alone. The Fortitude Tree King had no choice. If he did not let these world tree experts return to support him, the subduing Tree King would most likely die on the spot. Black Star had yet to make a move and could launch a sneak attack at any time. He was afraid that the subduing Tree King would repeat the same mistake and be sealed like the Heart Tree King, causing another Tree King crown to disappear. In addition, the Fortitude Tree King did not want the subduing Tree King to die in battle and enter hibernation. If that happened, wouldn't he have to take charge of the overall situation? He would rather let the otherworld tree experts die than to save the subduing Tree King. The retreat of the world tree experts was interrupted, and the beyond grayed as of both sides fought again. On the other side, Sun Hunter flew past Dylan and laughed. Well done. Your provocation is not bad. You restrained him. What provocation? I just want to scold him. Dylan had a look of disdain on his face. He even looked at the subduing Tree King with anger. Hearing this, the beyond grayed as flying around all looked at him with strange gazes. Scolding the enemy was nothing. If it was a private chat, it would have been fine, but he was scolding them in the public chat. You were attacking the pugilists, and we all heard it clearly. If you say that it's not a provocation, wouldn't that mean that even our pugilists were scolded by you? At this moment, Serene flew past him with a dissatisfied expression. Don't bring us pugilists into the picture when you insult the enemy. Dylan glanced at him and said matter-of-factly, You're trash too. Don't stop me. I'm going to kill him now. Serene was furious. Business is more important. Ignore him. Sun Hunter quickly grabbed Serene's finger and dragged him away without much strength. Dylan had completely adapted to his identity as a hero spirit of the underworld, and he no longer had any scruples when speaking. The Beyond grayed as no longer bothered to lower themselves to his level. After all, what was there to be calculative about with a dead person? On the battlefield, the subduing Tree King retreated as he fought. His fists and feet were filled with anger, and the power of his attacks increased. Hela caught up again, and the reddish-black giant's fists struck out rapidly. Its arms were like rubber, constantly pulling back and popping out, and the strength of each strike was constantly increasing. However, the current subduing Tree King had no interest in being in a stalemate with her. Every move he made exploded with all his strength, and all of them landed on Hela's body. After a few rounds, Hela's head was bleeding. She was at a disadvantage and could not retaliate. Although her form was also good at close combat, there was still a gap between her and the subduing Tree King who was going all out. After all, the pugilist class still had some meaning, bang. The fist that was shining with a green cross-shaped light landed deeply on the red-black giant's body, sinking deep into it. The surging pugilist flames entered the little giant's body. The next moment, a green light suddenly lit up in the red-black giant's body. In the blink of an eye, it expanded and dyed its entire body a dazzling green. It exploded from the inside out. Like a balloon exploding, the highly concentrated death energy that formed the transformed body directly exploded, turning into red light fragments that filled the sky. Hela's main body was exposed. Before Hela could retreat, the subduing Tree King grabbed her neck and punched Hela's face with his other hand. Blood and broken bones splattered everywhere. Strong. A golden light flashed, and Hela's heavily injured face instantly recovered. The intense pain did not affect her movements at all. She condensed death energy and was about to exchange injuries for injuries to blast the subduing Tree King. However, the subduing Tree King saw through her plan. He raised his leg and kicked her in the abdomen, interrupting her movements. He kicked her body until it folded and flew backward. Her spine had already been broken by the huge, penetrating force. Cough, cough, cough. Hela spat out a mouthful of blood. She controlled her muscles to correct the position of her spine, reconnecting the broken nerves and blood vessels. She also absorbed a trace of life energy from Aurora's soul connection, allowing her injuries to quickly recover. The Death God Liberation form had been scattered and was still on cooldown. Although Hela had no intention of admitting defeat, she had no choice but to face the reality that she could not defeat the subduing Tree King and analyze the current situation. Although I can still continue to fight the subduing Tree King, I can't hold him back. This will let him escape. Hela's eyes were still filled with fighting spirit, but she was afraid that she would ruin Han Zhao's goal, so she could only suppress it. "Did I hurt you?" Seeing that she did not continue to charge forward, the subduing Tree King narrowed his eyes and did not chase after her. Although he had accidentally been left alone and caused a large group of beyond grade, as of the three universal civilizations, to surround him, the World Tree experts had returned in time to help and broke through the encirclement that had yet to form, dragging the situation back into a chaotic battle. Therefore, the subduing Tree King was still in a good situation and was not surrounded. The subduing Tree King observed the situation and relaxed a lot. Although Hela was not easy to deal with, she could not stop him at all. With his ability, as long as there were no beyond grade as like Black Star to stall him, the chances of him escaping were still very high. Because of him, the evacuation was interrupted, but he was still safe. The negative consequence was that he had to sacrifice more companions. Although it was a little disadvantageous, as long as he, the Tree King, returned, these losses were still acceptable. After all, his hibernation period was much longer than that of ordinary World Tree experts. I didn't expect a simple test to be so dangerous. I can't attack so casually next time. The subduing Tree King did not chase after Hela and retreated. However, at this moment, a strong sense of danger suddenly appeared, as if a large hand had grabbed his heart. The subduing Tree King's expression changed slightly, and he looked at the source of the feeling. A figure appeared out of thin air beside Hela. There was nothing special about his appearance, and he looked very ordinary with a calm expression. However, he was brimming with an unconcealable evil and crazy aura that seemed to seep out from his bones. God tilted his head and sized up the World Tree root beside the subduing Tree King. He revealed a subtle smile and sighed. "How many years has it been? I've finally seen this thing with my own eyes. If I hadn't seen it, I might not have been imprisoned for nearly 100 years. The subduing Tree King frowned and felt a strong threat from this stranger. He had already blocked the mental fluctuations of outsiders and did not know what God was saying. He turned around and ran without hesitation. This unfamiliar beyond grade A who had suddenly appeared was obviously not a simple character. The outcome of the battle would probably not be decided anytime soon. If he was dragged here, it would be dangerous. Therefore, the subduing Tree King did not want to fight at all. However, before he could fly far, the smiling God had already teleported in front of him. The subduing Tree King's eyes darkened, and a powerful flame condensed in his fist as he punched at God. He planned to use the shock wave to force this guy back. A green pugilist light beam shot out, and its power was enough to destroy a planet. However, God only raised his hand casually and activated his energy deflection Esper ability, refracting this beam of light and destroying a large number of starships like a laser beam. Esper. The subduing Tree King's eyes flashed, and he did not intend to stop. He quickly closed in and punched out with his fist shining with green light. Bang! The fist hit God's chest without any obstruction, but all the power disappeared without a trace. The subduing Tree King's expression changed. Just as he was about to retract his fist, God slapped him with his palm. Green light gushed out and reflected the power of the subduing Tree King's previous attack. Boom! A huge shockwave exploded, and the subduing Tree King was sent flying. He hurriedly stopped and looked at God in shock. He removed the mental shield and could not help but ask, what ability is this? Guess. God smiled. Even with the enhancement of his Esper ability, he would still be injured if he took such a blow head-on. In the past, he would have to worry about the burden on his body, so he would not dare to play like this. He rarely fought head-on, but now, his body was only temporary. He did not have to care about the consequences at all. God had a rare feeling of being free from worries. He hooked his finger at the subduing Tree King. Come, let me see what the Tree King is capable of. Your ability is not bad. You can absorb my strength and reflect it back, but with just these few moves, you don't have the right to show off in front of me. The subduing Tree King quickly calmed himself down and looked at ES God coldly. In a short exchange, he had already realized how difficult ES God was to deal with. He thought that ES God's Esper ability was to reflect or refract attacks, and that ES God was good at defense. However, at this moment, ES God smiled. Is that so? What about this? Buzz. The next moment, 60 to 70 doppelgangers suddenly separated from ES God's main body. Each doppelganger had a different ability, and they all released the aura of a beyond grade, instantly attracting the attention of everyone present. Countless shocked, and excited gazes. This is the subduing Tree King was alarmed, and his expression changed drastically. He had originally thought that this unfamiliar expert was only difficult to deal with and would at most stall him. The real danger came from the encirclement of the other beyond grade, however, at this moment, the sense of danger that ES God gave him was already close to that of Black Star. So there's actually such a strong enemy hidden in this civilization. The subduing Tree King's mood was solemn. Facing such an opponent, he did not dare to think about escaping. The next second, ES God and all his doppelgangers launched their attacks at the same time. All kinds of Esper abilities were used, forming a perfect combination. It was as if they were connected to each other, giving off a unique sense of beauty. In a head-on clash, ES God might not be the strongest among the beyond grade but due to the unprecedented diversity of his abilities, he could be considered the peak of the beyond grade Oh no! Endless pressure assaulted him, and the subduing Tree King's eyes widened. He realized that he could not find any flaws, and he could not help but be shocked. The strength of this strong enemy in front of me is beyond my expectations. He seems to have the strength to kill me alone. Chapter 14:27. An intense battle broke out between the two of them. Dozens of doppelgangers with different Esper abilities cooperated flawlessly. As soon as they exchanged blows, ES God suppressed the subduing Tree King. The combination of various Esper abilities and combo attacks dazzled everyone. The exquisite and complicated operations immediately made the subduing Tree King dizzy. Previously, when ES God had just summoned his doppelgangers, the attention of all the beyond grade, as on both sides, was attracted. Now that they saw the subduing Tree King in such a sorry state, they could not help but have strange expressions. What a strong Esper! With so many beyond grade 8 doppelgangers assisting in the battle, although the subduing Tree King has the advantage in terms of explosive power, all his actions are interrupted by the large group of doppelgangers. He can't seize the rhythm of the battle at all and is completely passive. Fortitude Tree King wrestled with Herberlin while observing the battle on the subduing Tree King side. The more he watched, the more afraid he became. The subduing Tree King was held back by a large group of ES God doppelgangers and could not control the situation. He was like a weak teenager forced into an alley by a group of strong men. He could not control himself and was getting more and more separated from the main force. This strong enemy did not have the terrifying strength of Black Star, but Fortitude Tree King felt that it was also troublesome. When a super with a single ability faced such an opponent, if the strength of both sides did not have an insurmountable gap, then they would be at a disadvantage. A pugilist who only knew how to beat people was an example. Luckily, I'm a mechanic. This thought appeared in Fortitude Tree King's mind. On the other side, the beyond grade, as of the three universal civilizations, looked at ES God with surprise in their eyes. ES God, without any restraints, is really terrifying. His true combat strength is actually so strong. Many people were shocked. Most people knew of ES God's name, and many people had fought him personally. However, ES God's current combat strength was much stronger than what they remembered. He was not this strong in the past. It seems like the underworld suits him very well. Manison's eyes flickered, and his tone was complicated. ES God had been imprisoned for nearly 100 years and had wasted so many years. However, as soon as he entered the underworld, he was like a fish in water. His stubborn illness was gone, and his combat strength increased explosively. He had been studying hard for so many years, but due to Black Star's persistent targeting, his combat strength had actually regressed. He realized that he had no confidence in dealing with the current ES god. It was even worse than before. With such a comparison, Manison felt sad for himself. Seeing the battle between the two of them, everyone was shocked and quickly took action. The World Tree experts tried to help, but the morale of the three universal civilizations was greatly boosted. They tried even harder to stop the enemy, not allowing the enemy experts to leave the team battle to help. For the time being, the two of them couldn't care less about their teammates' movements. They were fully focused on the battle and dealing with their opponents. The green meteor rampaged through the battlefield, but it was like a small bug that had fallen into a spider web. All of its attacks were neutralized by the strange defensive Esper abilities of the ES God doppelgangers. The subduing Tree King could not break out of ES God's encirclement at all and could only be dragged along. The subduing Tree King launched another melee combo attack, but the heavy fist that was shining with green light easily pierced through ES God's body. It did not hit anything, as if it had passed through an illusion. Before he could do anything else, an ES God doppelganger suddenly appeared from the side and floated over like smoke. It turned into the power of the curse and attached itself to his body. He suddenly felt his entire body go limp, and he could not even use half of his strength. The subduing Tree King did not have the time to clear the negative status, and the dozen or so ES God doppelgangers around him released different types of energy attacks at the same time. Some shot out high-energy lasers from their eyes. Some shot out silver X-shaped rays from their hands. Some shot out lightning chains from their electromagnetic fields like mahjong. And some pushed out dark red energy waves from their hands. There were all kinds of strange attacks. Bang, bang, bang. Colorful energy struck the subduing Tree King's body, and the light in the field expanded before exploding, causing the subduing Tree King to roll backward. Before he could fly far, the subduing Tree King felt something tighten around his waist. It turned out that an ES God doppelganger was already waiting on the way and hugging him. He reacted quickly and gave a powerful elbow strike to the head of the ES God doppelganger. However, he did not manage to push the other party back. The head of the ES God doppelganger suddenly became blurry, as if it was vibrating at a high frequency, and all the kinetic energy was absorbed. The next moment, the ES God doppelganger's crotch pushed forward and the kinetic energy rebounded. It did not miss anything and rushed into the subduing Tree King's body, causing him to feel intense pain all over his body. Get lost! The subduing Tree King's expression was twisted and his aura erupted. He broke free from the control and threw the ES God doppelganger away. However, before he could take any further action, more than 10 mental attacks from different Esper abilities suddenly exploded in his brain. The subduing Tree King immediately spat out blood from his mouth and nose, and his soul was injured. A lot of negative statuses appeared on his mind, and he felt dizzy. He endured bitterly and was about to use the World Tree Roots to save himself when he realized that the World Tree Roots had already been controlled by another batch of ES God Doppelganger space, force field, and other Esper abilities. It was as if they had fallen into a swamp and could not move. How many Esper abilities do you have? The subduing Tree King was completely shocked. After fighting for a while, this opponent had already used more than 100 Esper abilities. Attack, defense, control, evasion. All kinds of domains were like a bottomless abyss. There was simply no limit to it. Up until now, ES God had never used any big moves to cause him heavy injuries. However, this kind of fighting style was like eating away at his life bit by bit, constantly causing light injuries, causing his injuries to accumulate time and time again. It was extremely disgusting. I didn't count. ES God's tone was calm as he continued to attack. His Esper abilities were endless, and he could be said to be omnipotent. He completely controlled the rhythm of the battle and did not give the subduing Tree King a chance to catch his breath. His lethality was secondary, and the strongest was his near-perfect control chain. The subduing tree king endured the dense attacks as he observed the situation with difficulty. Seeing that the main force was getting further and further away, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. My teammates are being held back, and it's very difficult for them to rush over to support me. If I continue fighting with him like this, my condition will continue to decline, and the chances of escaping will become slimmer and slimmer. The subduing tree king's expression changed, and he suddenly had an idea. That's right, Black Star hasn't appeared yet. How can he not participate in the battle? He must be secretly waiting for me. The Heart Tree King has fallen, and Black Star definitely knows that the other Tree Kings will be even more vigilant. So he hid for the time being and pretended not to participate in the battle. He wanted to use this to lower my guard. When this Esper exhausts my condition to a certain extent, he will suddenly attack and seal me. At this moment, the subduing Tree King felt that his thoughts had cleared up. That must be it. This is a trap. That was close. If I wasn't decisive enough, I would have fallen for it today. I definitely can't fall for his trick. He thought that he had understood Black Star's plan and made up his mind. God did not know anything about the subduing Tree King's thoughts. Just as he was about to order his doppelganger to launch a new wave of attacks, a terrifying energy was suddenly released from the subduing Tree King's body. This feeling is... God's pupils constricted, and he retreated without hesitation. The subduing Tree King's face was filled with determination, and his body suddenly emitted a strong light. I'd rather self-destruct than let you succeed. Bang! His entire body exploded, and an intense energy shockwave spread out. The God doppelgangers around him were all sent flying, and the world tree roots also turned into light and disappeared inch by inch. The subduing Tree King had always thought that he was a rational pugilist. His current choice was based on his own interests. He was being held back by God, and Black Star was eyeing him from the dark. The chances of him escaping were slim, so he decided to self-destruct before his condition deteriorated to the point where he could not retaliate. On one hand, he wanted the enemy's sneak attack to fail, and on the other hand, he wanted his teammates to stop coming to support him. He had killed 2 birds with 1 stone. There is only one word to describe it: wonderful. Swoosh! God's figure flashed, and he avoided the shockwave of the self-destruction with a surprised expression. It was not easy for him to find an opponent, and he wanted to have a good fight. He did not expect the enemy to explode just like that. In his opinion, although the subduing Tree King was at a disadvantage, he was still a Tree King. Even if he had the advantage, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill the other party. The current situation was far from the time to self-destruct. Forget it. At least the target has been dealt with. God suddenly shook his head and laughed. The situation of the battle changed rapidly. If the subduing Tree King resisted to the end, he might still have a chance to escape. However, for some reason, he actually self-destructed now. Then, there was no need to worry about any accidents. Black Star's instructions were to kill this guy. If his opponent killed himself, it would save him some effort. On the other side, the Fortitude Tree King was shocked when he sensed the subduing Tree King's self-destruction. He felt that although the situation was not good, it was not impossible. Why did he give up hope of survival just like that? He could still be saved. The Fortitude Tree King quickly received the mental activity of the subduing Tree King before he died and immediately understood. So he did this because he was worried about falling into the enemy's trap. The Fortitude Tree King was speechless. Because of the revival mechanism, to the world tree experts, this method of self-destruction to prevent being captured by the enemy was very common. The last time, the subduing Tree King had self-destructed and died like this. He did not expect it to be the same this time. It was surprisingly similar. The Fortitude Tree King did not know if he should say that the subduing Tree King was decisive or that the subduing Tree King had died in the same place twice. In just one test, he had lost a Tree King. He only felt tired. Sigh. It can't be said to be a bad thing. He did die a little too quickly, but I guarantee that he won't suffer like the Heart Tree King. The Fortitude Tree King sighed in his heart. He could only think on the bright side. At the very least, the subduing Tree King's sacrifice was not worthless. At the very least, he had found out the opponent's background. This unfamiliar Esper who was not inferior to Black Star, as well as that large-scale killing device that left no traces behind, must be the enemy's trump card. With this information, he would be able to prepare in advance the next time they fought. He had finally gained something from this battle. He felt that the subduing Tree King had died a worthy death. It was a pity that this tool was gone. He could not slack off anymore. Thinking of this, the Fortitude Tree King no longer had any intention of fighting. He suppressed the anger in his heart and immediately ordered a retreat. Let's go. The many-world tree experts no longer fought and retreated as they fought. After paying a price, they finally returned to the main formation and were protected by the fleet again. Seeing this, the Beyond Grade, as of the three universal civilizations, did not chase after them and retreated into the defensive circle. Seeing this, the leaders of the three universal civilizations, who were watching the battle remotely, relaxed and were secretly surprised. Without Black Star making a move, a portion of the Beyond Grade as had given the World Tree experts a head-on blow, causing the enemy to suffer. In their eyes, this was undoubtedly the result of Black Star's training over the past 10 years. Although Black Star is unpredictable, he is still trustworthy in this aspect. There shouldn't be anyone in the entire galactic society who knows how to nurture supers better than him. Black Star has contributed a lot to this huge improvement. His 10 years of hard work have allowed us to gain the advantage in terms of individual strength. The three of them were more or less relieved. At the same time, in the base, Han Xiao raised his brows when he saw the subduing Tree King explode into the most beautiful fireworks. He actually chose to self-destruct at this time. Could it be that he's afraid that I'll ambush him? Isn't this a case of being too smart for your own good? Among pugilists, you're one of the more simple-minded ones. Han Xiao could not help but laugh. He did not intend to make a move, but he did not expect the subduing Tree King to scare himself and decisively die. It could only be said that he had left quite a shadow in the World Tree's heart. This time, without his help, the other teammates had already made the World Tree suffer a loss. There is no doubt that their improvement was significant, and Hela and the others could take charge alone. He was very satisfied. Most importantly, a portion of the revivers and newborns suppressed their impulses until the end of the battle and did not appear to participate in the battle. This meant that the revival of the Holy Covenant was still not exposed. To Han Xiao, this was a great thing. The World Tree's attack was clearly just a probe, and they had only revealed the tip of the iceberg. They had not revealed all of their trump cards and killed the subduing Tree King while keeping a portion of their trump cards. Sending this B***starred home to hibernate was more worth it than expected. As a result, the World Tree did not obtain more information and still maintained the wrong judgment that the exchange strategy was effective. Han Zhao's eyes flashed, and he stroked his chin with a playful smile. It seems like you guys don't even have the right to enjoy the gift I've prepared for you. All right, I'll give you this surprise when you send out a Tree King with enough strength. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.